Ladies and gentlemen, I have the men, the men's, the men's, the myths, the legends with me, and it's early in the morning with you for you guys. It's in the late in the afternoon. We're having a little heat spell up here, and you guys are having winter down there, right?
Yeah, it's winter.
Sure is.
Dang. And
Oh,
welcome.
no, we're going to talk over each other. This is the problem. Three guys with microphones. It's going to be it's going to be us just talking over each other. No, you go. Oh, stop. No, okay, your turn. You speak.
Well, I'm sure we'll manage, hopefully. So we'll start with Pat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this, and we'll wait for people to join in. I have to do this one thing, you guys. Do you guys have anything like that for Canine Paradigm?
No, we don't have anything like that.
That's really into the future.
Do you want me to? I'm on my computer. I can make something right now if you like. I'll have it ready. I'll have it ready soon. Although I'm not using the kind of streaming thing where I can show off my screen. It's only you.
No, you can.
I can?
Just go down to the present or whatever down below.
Yeah.
And everybody can share their screen.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe. So I can get going in the background.
Yeah. And then you guys are welcome to share this too if you have on the Canine Paradigm.
Yeah, I'm doing that
page.
right now.
Okay, cool. So we can have your audience join us, and we'll see who the early risers are in Australia. And then this is prime time in America, so we should have a good audience. And if you guys are watching this right now, please share it as well. We'll wait for people to trickle in. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to get going. And while I share this, do you guys, I know you guys don't need too much of an introduction, but do you guys want to introduce yourselves? We'll start with Pat and then go to Glenn and then talk about the Canine Paradigm and tell people what it's all about, where you're located and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Pat Stewart. I'm a dog trainer here. I'm in Sydney in Australia right now. I'm in my shop. It's in Leichhardt, which is kind of like just outside the actual CBD. I'm a couple of suburbs outside the CBD. I've been training dogs professionally for just coming up on 10 years since I left the army. Obviously it was a thing that I did while I was in the army, but didn't start doing it full time until I left nearly 10 years ago. How long have we been doing the podcast, Glenn? It's been 5 years or more. 6 years, something like that. It's 2017 is when we started, I think. Mm-hmm. So we've got the podcast called the Canine Paradigm. It's just me and Glenn just waffling bullshit at each other every week. People enjoy it, so we continue to do it.
And how about you, Glenn?
I'm Glenn Cooke, as it says in my little tile down below. I've been training dogs professionally since 1990. It's been a hell of a ride. I started in Melbourne. I'm currently in Sydney. The Melbourne stint was I was going to say it's the longest, but I'm just coming up to 14 years now in Sydney. So it's probably half now, which has been terrific. It's an interesting story. I know I've told this before, but when I left Melbourne to come to Sydney, many of my colleagues were betting that I'd be back within 6 months with my tail between my legs back to Melbourne. And that was 13 and a half years ago. So fuck everybody. I'm still up. It's been great. I made a home for myself up here with Narelle. I made a collage of really terrific friends and colleagues in the industry up here. It's been terrific. It was one of the best things I ever did in my life. Then of course, as Pat said, we met each other. We were sort of hanging out, training, talking about life. And then we got into the nitty gritty of deciding that we were going to put a podcast together. And here we are 6 years later, still going strong. We still get along great. We still, like for two guys that have been together as long as we have, we don't fight with each other. We don't argue. We enjoy each other's company. I enjoy Pat's. So it's been great, mate. We've been very, very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. I get up regularly and I think to myself how great things turned out. So here's to a good life.
And just so you all know, none of us dye our beards.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
You did.
I did. And Jason Furman, let me tell you, he was the most vocally critical person in the group. He used to absolutely spit fire and venom at me all the time. He used to say, "What are you doing? You fucking idiot. At your age, you look like a bozo." And coming from Jason, I mean, of all people to say that I look like a bozo from Jason Furman, of all people. But yeah, I just decided one day I wouldn't do it anymore, so I stopped dyeing my beard.
Yeah, just come to grips with the
Yeah,
truth.
I didn't know you dyed your beard.
It went from grey to like perfectly brown one day.
That's funny. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, and then both of us were asking Pat if he dyed his when we were starting. That's where that came from. So when you guys started the podcast, were you guys like having a conversation and be like, you know what, we should have recorded that? Or how did you start? What was the catalyst?
Well, it was because Pat and I we would often be amongst a collage of people out in the training shed or just even in the house. And we were telling stories and recanting on things that we've done in our dog training years and our life careers and Pat's army careers and so forth. And several people approached me and they said, geez, you guys should get together and do a show or something like that. You know, there's so many interesting things that together you've done, and just the way that you guys banter backwards and forwards with things that you've done and experiences that you had, it would make interesting listening, or at least write a book about it or something. And then after I appeared on Josh Moran's podcast, that was quite some time ago, I liked it and I liked the experience. And I kind of thought, I'd love to learn how to do that. I'd love to learn how to put something like that together and learn how to understand audio a little better. And that's when I approached Pat and I said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. What do you think? And he goes, yeah, man, I'm all in. So yeah, that was the origins and the beginnings of the Canine Paradigm.
Well, and I know Pat is even taking it by being a content creator. Were you knowledgeable about this stuff, Pat, about audio, video, AV stuff?
Nah, not at all, mate. So like when we started the podcast, Glenn was really the driving force on all that. I was like, yeah, we can just do it on our phones. We'll be fine. And he was like, no, mate, we're going to do this properly. And he was doing all the editing and really knew everything about all of the equipment and everything like that. I just turned up and spoke. But then it was during COVID, like, you know, when we started the Patreon, especially, I started trying to make content to go into that and was really just doing it off my phone, same as everybody else. Didn't really have any special equipment. I bought one camera, which was a bit of a disaster. I bought this like OBSBot tail thing. Remember that tracking camera I got, Glenn? And it just, it wasn't there yet, you know, like I think that tracking, it's still not really there. Even the DJI stuff is not quite ready for that level of tracking that I was trying to get from it. So it was a bit of a disaster. So I just did everything on my phone. But then it was during COVID, I, you know, like we were starting to, you know, get some traction online and people were watching our stuff and people were interested in the Patreon content, which I was filming off my phone using just a Bluetooth headset. And I said to Glenn one day, I was like, oh, mate, like everybody's going online, and in order to stay ahead of the curve or at least be competitive or be interesting to people, I think now it's going to take another step. And that's why I said, hey, I want to buy some decent gear. And for me, it was a hobby as well. You know, like I enjoy learning a lot. I enjoy the process of figuring things out. And Glenn and I both are sort of fairly techie kind of people. We enjoy, you know, new electronic crap. And so I bought some electronic crap and kind of got right into it and I was mostly self-taught. I bounced through a few different sort of editing softwares before I found the one that I like resonated with, tried a bunch of different cameras before I found the ones that work for me, and ended up making some like cool stuff. And I really got into it. And it was mostly, like I say, it was just that I had the time. I had the time to be able to invest into learning that stuff as well as produce cool stuff, because it was COVID and we were in lockdown and I couldn't actually train any dogs beyond my own. And so I had all this free time in the day. So I was like, you know what, I'll train my dogs and film it and make some cool stuff with it. And then I got into, editing cool, like making reels and stuff like that were, completely unrealistic training reels, because I was playing with the speeds of everything and ramping it and putting things in slow motion and all that kinds of stuff, just because I was enjoying doing it. And along the way, developed a pretty reasonable skill set, to the point where a few years ago, when I thought I want to have a break from dogs, I got a job as a creative director of a sales marketing agency and did this kind of stuff full time, and was for less than a year, I was filling a gap for a friend of mine, but I really enjoyed it. Like, I really enjoyed the idea of I made a bunch of social media stuff for people, as well as some commercials and stuff like that. Like, I shouldn't say commercials, ads. They were just social media ads, but I enjoyed it. It's fun. And so now it remains a bit of a hobby. What I'll say, though, the problem and me and Glenn were just talking about this, I think last week, is it's pretty easy to sort of paint yourself into a bit of a corner, once you start sort of producing things that are really high quality, I don't think anybody really cares, every time I've done a live or a podcast with somebody and I bother setting all of this up, everyone's like, oh, wow, that looks cool. And we carry on, and it's no different to anybody that's just doing it on their webcam. But I had to come here an hour early to set all this up.
I'm at my web. I just got here and I pushed play, but it looks great, man. And that's the first thing I said. And I think, I think for greater reach too, it does make a difference. It's more enjoyable to consume. And I think that as we evolve in this blogging space, or this content creation type of economy that it's growing, I guess it's like at 20 billion right now, but slated to be up to about 63 billion in 2030. Right. So it's going to triple, and people are making a really good living, just sharing their passions about, what they do and what they're knowledgeable about. So it makes sense, man.
And
for
Evan
sure, I think it's a big growing thing. Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
Evan Doggett, he's saying, I care, Pat.
I'm gonna put the comments on. It's a funny one, right? Like it is tricky because you paint yourself into a corner over where, and you wonder if anyone cares. But during COVID, I made this video about prong collars. And it was it really, prong collars were on the chopping block. They ended up being banned in Queensland. But I wanted to make a video explaining why I use a prong collar, not like this is how you do it. There's tons of this is how you do it. And did it like a vlog style. See, like I did Casey Neistat's editing course. And so during COVID, I made a bunch of these vlogs and like I had trolls on them and stuff, like people from the dog industry teasing me over it. And I was like, fuck off, loser. Like I'm developing a new skill set here. Like I don't fancy myself. I'm not going to be a vlogger, but I'm practicing doing that. And these things, you have to actually do it in order to learn how to do it. So I was setting up cameras and figuring out how to do all that stuff. So I made this video about prong collars, and it took me a long time. It was really high spec, because like quality of footage and stuff like that. And I got the feedback exactly that I was hoping for, was that someone who was kind of not a force-free trainer, but a non-tool using person, but supported the use of tools by people who knew what they were doing, was like, oh, that's something I can share, right? So like that is a high enough quality production that the people who are willing to take that information are entertained by what they're seeing here and will stick through it. So it's not like a guy in his basement saying prong collars are good and you should use them. It was like more of a higher quality, more professional production that just meant that it would serve to get the message across. And I think that's what's important with the content stuff, and whether you're going to go crazy, whether you're going to get all the equipment or put so much effort into making it, it has to serve telling the story or getting the point across. And I think that's always been that's been a big thing to Glenn with the sound on our podcast. Like the sound, we're still just an audio only podcast, but it allows people to take in the message because they're no longer then just concerned about like, oh, I can't hear it. There's an echo in the background. This sounds like shit. That brings a level of professionalism that allows people to then take the message in. And so that's, you know, from my point of view, that's the only reason why I continue with this stuff. But it's fun, like you get good and you get fast at it to the point where like I was impressed by your logo. So like I can then, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to do it now. How do I even share my screen? Window, this one, share. And then
wait, let me add it to the thing here. Okay, you're good.
Yeah, like in minutes I can then make like
dude, it's so much better than mine.
So that's us. But like, you know, you can make something like that while we're talking, you know, like what, like it's, you sort of figure that stuff out. And so it's just really helpful. You don't have to outsource things. That's one of the big things is I hate the idea of like, oh, I got to send the file to the guy and he's going to do it and he's going to send it back. And then we got to organize how we're going to pay him. Like just being able to do that stuff really quickly yourself means that when you have clients that, you know, you can put your own little intro onto stuff and you can modify it and stuff like that, that it just impresses people to the point where it's really no extra effort when you know how to do it. But yeah, I feel like it makes a big difference when it's done.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of off on a tangent, but even the AI thing, like if you guys like electronics, are you, I mean, I'm into it. I have AI help me write the intro that I sent every single one of my, I have little parameters that I plug into the AI. And I think someday that there's going to be robots that are going to help us train dogs, man. Like I look at Optimus with Tesla and I know we're kind of out there, but you know, technology is where it's at. It enables us freedom as human beings to leverage this technology to get a better experience and a deeper understanding of things too.
Yeah, I hope we don't face a world where robots are training dogs.
I think it's going to happen, dude.
There is. I actually made one of the sort of early projects that I did was a whole thing on robot dog training and to what extent we're going to be replaced by robots. It was at the sort of the very cusp of the AI stuff. And what happened at the time, there was a new product that was getting around. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was a dog training robot. So it was basically a camera and a screen and it dispensed treats and it could determine, like it was analyzing the dog's body and posture and it would shape the dog essentially. And I just looked at it and thought, what a fucking abomination. Like this thing is a disaster and I don't want anything to do with it. And, you know, so much of dog training is the connection with the dog. And, you know, what I've seen as well as like, you know, and there's plenty of evidence in that, like, you know, comfort comes from the, you know, what we're doing with the dog is developing a relationship that we want to live with them. Right. And like you look at the Iron Maiden experiments with those little monkeys that when they get scared, they run to the soft, fluffy thing, not the thing that dispenses food to them. And so they want warmth and they want connection. And I think that that's similar, you know, with dogs. And so I don't think we're ever going to be replaced by robots. So in that sense, I think that like they're, you know, who knows how far into the future there will be robot helpers doing everything. And I've seen that Tesla bot and everybody that knows me knows how terrified I am of AI and that like I consider the Terminator movies a documentary. I think that we're for sure going to be wiped out by or we're going to do something with machines. And I think it's going to happen in the very near future. Like we're going to be alive for it, where the world changes in a way where it's no longer recognizable to a person who wasn't there prior to it. Yeah, this thing. Yeah. So like that's dog shit, mate. Like there's no way I'm letting, like I don't see a future where that thing's taken over. But, you know, in terms of using AI, I think that even people like me, so like I was really anti-AI at the start because I'm so scared of the inevitable machine uprising. But now I'm like, well, you got to embrace it. And so, but I think there's things to use it for. And so, you know, I use ChatGPT. I use it to, you know, proofread my emails for me or give me summaries of things and stuff like that. But I think that one of the things when it first came out, when ChatGPT first started becoming popular and people started using those large language models was when I was working at that sales and marketing agency. And what we're doing there mostly was selling courses for coaches and stuff like that, coaches and consultants. And what I found myself telling quite a few of these people who were just going AI crazy was that, hey man, if AI is actually able to make your content you are perhaps not the thought leader of your industry that you're telling people that you are, because AI can't come up with anything new, right? So like if even when I've tried plenty of different platforms, and like I use Opus Clips. So, once a month I go live, I answer questions within our Patreon. And then I thought, oh, cool. Like I record those. I can plug that into Opus Clips and it can make me content, right? Like it can cut that into clips and that just saves me time. It's really me saying it. I'm not expecting AI to come up with anything. But because what I'm talking about is, first of all, balance training, which it's not very well trained on. It's mostly trained on like force-free type training, as well as what I'm talking about is not the basics, right? So like what I'm talking about in those lives is people asking me specific questions and me leveraging my knowledge, which is fairly extensive and somewhat advanced for, the industry in general. I had no idea what to do with it. Like the clips that it made were terrible, and it just was pulling random pieces of it because it didn't know what to do with the information that I was giving, because it didn't have a point of reference again, or it didn't have enough points of reference against that information. So I think while AI within our space is important and you have to start leveraging it, I think that the people who are worried about losing their jobs to AI are going to lose their jobs, but not to AI. They're going to lose their jobs to somebody who knows how to use AI better than them, right? So I think that you do have to use it, you do have to leverage it, but it has a place. And like creativity is not its place. Thought leader stuff, like being at the cutting edge of whatever your industry is, and for us dogs, it's not there for AI. So like I think that if anybody is thinking that they're going to bust into the dog space with AI stuff, it's just not going to happen. But, what it can do is write blogs that nobody's ever going to read for your SEO. Like you can have, like I'm in the process of doing that now. I've got AI writing a bunch of blogs that aren't even going to be on public facing web pages. Nobody's ever going to read them, but I just need them to be on the page somewhere so that the SEO helps people find my page. And that's something that you, like a person, would have to do in the past, but you don't need to do that anymore. So little things like that, AI is super helpful, but it ain't going to be training our dogs. Or if it is, I don't want to be in that world.
Well, and you have to supplement it, and that's just like what you were saying. What are your thoughts on this, Glenn? And just so you guys know, if you have any questions or comments, we'll get to those here in a little bit. Go ahead and write them down. We'll go through them. And what are your thoughts on AI and emerging technologies, Glenn?
It's here. We have to embrace it. I think Pat made some really good, eloquent points before about the use of AI. I use it on a regular basis when I'm putting polish to any of the content. So prior to a blog going out for one of the episodes, I type in all the parameters. So I'm not lazy about what I do. If I'm going to do show notes, I get into ChatGPT and I type in, like the foundations of what we were discussing. So I'll say, for example, in this episode, Pat and Glenn talked about this topic. This is where I want the conversation to lead. And then I ask ChatGPT just to generate it. So it's still not taking the authenticity away from what we discussed and just creating some random lazy blog. It's still creating the parameters of what we were discussing, because I think that's important to me, or to us, I should say. But it's important when I'm doing it, that when I look at it and I reflect on the story that it's telling, that defines like a compressed version of the podcast, then it satisfies me that that's the spirit of what the show was talked about. Otherwise, you can put things in and it will just go, everyone knows this. I'm not telling anyone how to suck eggs who's used ChatGPT or AI before, but it will randomly produce something that is completely mystical. Like it goes off on this like fantastic voyage of wordage. When you read it, you just think, wow, that sounds amazing, but none of it's true. So that's why I feel that it's important, again, to reference what Pat was talking about before. I think it's important to harness it and to understand it, but don't make it your master, and don't become lazy and irrelevant to the use of AI. I think it's like, it's like the use of working with dogs. I mean, we have a great partnership with dogs. We enjoy the company. but, people can also be overcome by their dogs as well. Like when I'm watching people in society, how encompassed they become in the relationship with their dog, rather than understanding, like this is how the hierarchy needs to work. In order for my dog to really enjoy and really to encapsulate a perfect life, this is how it should go down. I mean, yes, I want to love this dog. Yes, I want to have a relationship with this dog. And that's important to me, but I don't want to get into a fixated relationship where now I'm literally painted myself into a corner by creating this unrealistic relationship with a dog and the expectations of society. And we're seeing that. We're seeing how people are now, and I will say, a form of mental illness, where I'm seeing the dictation of people telling us how we have to live with dogs. And I don't want that to become the precursor for AI as well.
I think it already has in some ways. When I asked to, how do we work with this dog? It's all about positive reinforcement. And it's like, it's even when I try to, I've actually had little conversations with ChatGPT talking about negative reinforcement, and it agrees with me. Right, where I explain, no, this is how the negative reinforcement is used to build, or I'll ask it, what is the meaning of negative reinforcement? How do we use it to build it? And they always put the caveat of positive reinforcement, or always spin it towards that way. So it's almost impregnated with this philosophy that we know as professionals through our experiences that doesn't always pan out. It doesn't always speak the truth.
Yeah, can I just quickly jump in on there? The bias that it has reminds me of the bias that we see in science-related terms as well. And yes. I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday from Denmark, somebody who actually just started as a message to wish me a happy birthday. And then I looked into their credentials and I realized that this person has actually, done ethology with Roger Abrantes and written books and so forth. And they were congratulating Pat and I on how brave we are of talking about subject matter. And I just saw Larry Crone pop up, who said hi. Hi, Larry. And hi, everybody else that said hi as well.
Check it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I often, the reason I brought up Larry is incredibly brave and very authentic how he talks about things. And that's, I feel that is a dying art. And it's something that is fading from the world that I grew up in, where people were real to each other. They weren't so fake nice to each other through the use of social media. They weren't afraid of losing something, losing image, or being cancelled. And Larry's very old school about that. He's not it's by no means is he a bad guy. He's a brilliant guy. Yeah. And I've got shitloads of respect for Larry, because he doesn't concentrate on this fake narrative, this fake nice that people are trying to do to each other. It's not that I don't want people to be nice to each other. Don't read something into don't develop this false narrative that's what I'm trying to say. I enjoy people being nice to each other, but I really, really enjoy knowing where I stand with people on an ongoing basis. That's really, really important to me. And that might not be important to other people. They might think, no, I want to live in an artificial world where people are pretending to be nice, pretending to be my friend. I need to know, if I'm like training dogs, I need to know where the parameters are. I need to know where I stand with people. If I've gone too far in a conversation, if I've said something that's hurtful for them, if I've done something that's meaningful to them, those things are really, really important to me. And those type of people are really important to me as well. I've had conversations before on the podcast where I've talked about a topic and Pat said to me, hey, mate, like, are you okay? Like, do you really want to say that? And that takes a friend to say those type of things to you. That takes, that's a great relationship to be in with anybody, where they can call you on your bullshit, or they can, give you guidelines and help or mentor you in your behavior, tell you when you're misbehaving, and have the bravery to do those type of things. I feel that, all of that is a very, very good package. And that gets back onto this, this false narrative that I see ChatGPT and AI doing, is it does have a bias. And that's incredibly frustrating. That's something that should remain neutral and always should have. And even our colleagues in science should remain neutral and should say, here is the science, not here is what I'm going to favor because, some grossly profitable pharmaceutical company is now paying me to have a whimsical view on things or a favorable view on things, this is getting out of hand. Like, it's really, really getting out of hand. And I know I'm ranting about this, but it frustrates me that all of a sudden ChatGPT is trying to guide me into its own false narrative that somebody has programmed into it.
I think it's important to point out as well, like with ChatGPT and like the Google Gemini was probably one of the worst examples of it sort of having a real bias programmed into it. But I think certainly in our space, when we talk dog training, ChatGPT's bias towards force-free training or having it feels as though it has a blockage to wanting to give balanced training advice is not because anybody programmed it to be that way. It's because that's the majority of the blog articles that are available for it to read. And so the answer really is for us. And, you bring out the point, Glenn, like we talk about it, but we're not really the podcast doesn't, we should need to do transcriptions better and sort of put those somewhere in order that it can read it, because the majority of the people who are writing blogs are not training dogs. And so people who are like actually really good and have real world training techniques are busy doing that. And maybe they make video content because that's more consumable and more, there's the proof is in the pudding for balanced trainers. But people who are just smashing out blog posts and just filling websites full of nonsense, that's what ChatGPT is trained on. So when it scours the internet has a bias towards force-free training. And that's our job now. That's our job as balanced trainers who know how to actually do this stuff, is to create enough content that we can sway that, that those decisions back towards reality, I think, anyway.
And the unfortunate thing there too, Pat, is that we are a minority. The balanced movement. And I know people are getting on this. I don't want to be labeled as a dog trainer. However, how do we define this? There has to be some sort of definitions in place. Like I actually went with that narrative for a little bit of time, but now I'm swinging back the other way where I'm just thinking, oh, look, fuck a lot of you. I'm going to label myself back as a balanced trainer again, because I just don't agree with this. Like I'm a dog trainer, because I keep getting asked by people all the time, like, where do you stand with this? And if I just say I'm a dog trainer, they basically think, oh, well, so you're siding with the other side all the time. So that's not going to be the case anymore. That's a great comment from Evan too. Yes, we are the minority in this sort of situation, because we're a shrinking group of dedicated people who are interested in telling the truth, where the other people are still selling this Kool-Aid theory all the time.
Well, I think it boils down to truth, right? Like we're trying to tell the truth. We're showing them reality. And just like my dad, I always remember this, you guys, is he says, doing what's right doesn't always feel good. And sometimes the truth doesn't feel good, man. Sometimes the truth sucks. Sometimes the truth's fucking brutal. And when people are paying us for a service, get away from their dog. Don't unplug my shit. Come here. When people are paying us for the truth, we owe it to them, not just professional obligation, but a moral obligation, in my opinion, too. And when we see something,
sorry, Bill, if you're an honest person, don't expect your friendship list to be enormous. Like that's one thing that I can guarantee with people, because people say they want honesty, they don't really. Like a lot of times people want flattery. They want a package that's designed to look honest but not be honest. Because the people I've been honest before, when people said to me, tell me honestly, like give me feedback about me, and they want the honest truth, it's not that I'm being critical of them, but if I am honest with them, sometimes you can just see like the look in their face, like, you bastard. Like, why are you saying these things? Because that's honesty, and it doesn't mean that I'm trying to hurt people, but sometimes people don't like being constructively criticized. They want you to build up, using the word again, false narrative. They want you to build this false narrative. Not everybody. Like I do know people who love honesty and they thrive on it, and they will say, be honest and, and tell me the truth. And fortunately, I've surrounded myself with a lot of those people who I really enjoy their company. And I also enjoy likewise, I enjoy knowing where I stand with those people too. And I do know where I stand with those people. I have real relationships with those people.
Yeah, the people that will call you out on your shit, right? And sometimes you need to be called out on your shit because you're headed to the ditch, or and that's where a lot of times when I come into the fold, when I come into the situation, it's because you and your dog have gotten this relationship off into the ditch, and now you're paying me your hard-earned money to right this path. And sometimes it's a bigger pay grade than me, even when we see that it is kind of like you were saying, a mental illness, man. Like, I need you to see what's going on in front of you in order to acknowledge that you need to change, but not just change this relationship, but change this whole dynamic of how you perceive this animal and what this means to you. And we're dealing with a powerful breed like a Rottie, a pit bull, or somebody that this dog is no joke. And that's where it gets kind of, it gets hard because you owe them the truth, but then you also have to keep yourself safe and realize, hey, look, man, I can't help you. This is above my pay grade. And this is something that, this dog has become an emotional dumping ground in a sense. This dog has become a surrogate for the work that you need to do on yourself before we even start to work on this animal. And it's also, a byproduct of not just a broken world, but also a broken human being, possibly.
Can I just, I need to jump in there again because it just reminded me of the last episode we did. Pat came in and said, I want to do an episode on leashes. I want to get back to this, like discussions on dog training. I thought, yeah, good topic. It's a very important one because it really highlights the origins of where we need to begin our journey with dogs and where we need to revisit a lot of structure in that. And I was sort of talking about a relationship I had with my own dog, Harley, where I was struggling with this, him pulling me all the way down the park. And I lead off into this giant story about it. And it probably goes for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to recant the whole thing. But then Pat said to me at the end, he goes, knowing what you know now, are you surprised when you look back at that, how long it actually took you? The answer is yes, of course. The other point that I'll have to make there is that during that time, prong collars weren't available in Australia. The minute the prong collar came in, it changed everything. Like the whole narrative on training changed. Like I was struck, and the reason that that was a very important aspect is because a guy came from America. His name was Pat O'Connor. He was working for Ray Allen. He brought a whole bag of them. The minute he showed it to me, I was horrified. I thought that is the most distasteful, like, I just, words escaped me at the time. I just looked at it and I said, that just looks like a torture device. And Pat was terrific with what he said to me. He pulled me aside and he goes, Glenn, don't judge a book by its cover. He said, if we try this on your dog and it has a negative effect on him, he goes, I will give you money towards, he goes, I'll give you $1,000. He goes, I'm so confident that this will change the lives, both your lives, your life and the dog's life. I'm so confident. I'll give you $1,000, not Australian, American. I'll give you 1,000 American bucks if this really has a negative effect on your dog. And, I spent some time, I watched another dog training on it, and then I saw the transformation like suddenly before my eyes. I couldn't believe it. So, I was a little timid at the time. I walked back up to Pat and I said, let's do it. Let's put this device on the dog. We put it on the dog and he mentored me properly on how to use it. He said, don't yank it like I've been watching you yank your correction chain. He said, ease up on it. Let the dog understand how to make a connection with this device. He, like most good mentors, he broke it in. And he described it very much like the bit that a horse wears in the corners of his mouth. He said, you don't tear that thing back. He said, you just ease, like if you want to go right, you pull it right. If you want to go left, you pull it left. We all know. When I put it on the dog, instant transformation. Everything that I was struggling with, the Harley used to forge ahead of me in the heel. Suddenly, this incredible device had the most amazing and captivating effect on my dog. So this is, I obviously when people are listening to this, they can see how passionate I am about it because I'm so frustrated that this device has taken such a hit over time. And I'm so frustrated that yes, that whole event took me 1 month to do. And I'm so frustrated for all our clients over time who have had an incredible burden on their hands trying to hold their dogs back, trying to get down to the park, trying to enjoy a walk, when you can literally give them the right corrective device or the right control mechanisms, and literally it's life-changing overnight for them. So the fact that we have lawmakers in all our country debating for us as dog owners without even knowing the science behind it, they don't care about the science behind it. They're literally looking at a popular or a political viewpoint on it, and they're trying to sway us on it. Those sort of things incredibly frustrate me. And I was, I've recanted that comment in my head when Pat and I were talking in the podcast about that situation, how frustrated I was about the fact that it did take a month, and how frustrated I was that I didn't have these opportunities where I could meet up with mentors, where I could meet up with like-minded people, where all of the equipment was available to me, where I could just say, yep, I'm just going to pop this on my dog and it's going to transform everything. And then suddenly, because it is working and we are seeing these great transformations with our dogs and with our clients and so forth, our governments are now stepping in and saying, oh, well, there's a group of people who don't like them. So unfortunately, that's not popular and we're going to take it off the market. And I wish that there was real science behind it, or I wish that there was a real reason for it, that they could say, hey, Glenn, Pat, and Bill, and everybody else that's listening, like, there is, significant evidence that points towards problems in muscle or skeletal damage in dogs, like overall, like you are literally going to cause long-term issues for your dog. I wish that they could present that science. Then I could be settled with it and say, okay, I can see it. I understand what you're saying. But this unrealistic bullshit false narrative that they build, they should be held accountable for it. And they're not. They're getting away with it. They're literally political criminals.
In the name of animal rights, in the name of animal welfare, where, with the harnesses, we've seen a lot of the negative aspects of the gate, and it's like the device that they actually recommend is doing what they purport the training device that we want to use is doing. And it's frustrating. I mean, because it is not a logical decision. It's an emotional, it appeals to the emotion, and people that know, corporations spend billions of dollars trying to get their product viewed in an emotional light, because people are 10 times more likely to act based on emotion than they are on pure logic. And that's where, like, Pat is there telling you, hey, let's be logical about this. Let's see what happens. I know first blush, when you see this, you think that it's a torture device or something like that. And how dare I even, want to even like think about putting that on my dog. But let's just see. And what I do is I actually put it on people, and I'll pull it and be like, look, this is not the last thing I ever want to do is hurt your dog. That, I want to fix this situation that you're paying me to do. You're paying me to help you with. And the tool, it's just like if we were to go to a mechanic or somewhere, they have these tools that, are just, they're abstract. I don't know what the heck they're used for, but man, when they need them, they make that job so much more effective and so much more efficient. And it's the same thing with this. It's like, it's just a tool. It's a tool to get us from point A to point B, to bridge that gap of understanding, so we can head off onto a better path, a better relationship, a better understanding that you have and this dog has with you as well. When did you first start seeing the prong, and how did you know, Pat, to give it a chance with Glenn, and how did you know to
Oh, it was
to
different,
say this?
Pat, mate. It wasn't me. It was long before my time.
It was Pat. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I had a
so
similar
same guy.
experience, mate. I had a similar experience. I remember the guy that showed me a prong collar the first time. I remember where I was standing in the kennel, and he's like, yeah, we're going to do prong collar. I was like, mate, if you think I'm putting this on my dog, you're kidding yourself. Like, there's no way. And I'm looking at it like, you're fucking kidding me? Like, I don't need this. But fortunately, same thing. I had a person with patience who was willing to explain to me, like, nah, man, you got to understand how this works. And, within a few minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I see what this is doing. And I could easily have become a very anti-prong collar person, like without a doubt. Like if you haven't used one and you just get told this is designed to stab a dog in the neck and you see it, you go, oh, fuck, yeah, I'm anti that for sure. And I would have, like in my mind, I would have, like when I was being taught how to use a prong collar, I was already like using e-collars. So I was like very okay with balanced training. It's just like the prong collar, the way it looks, but you don't understand, you don't know what you don't know. And so by the time I came to understand it correctly and use it properly, I was like, oh, this is an incredible tool. And like, it's not like it's not like you can't train a dog without a prong collar. Like there's just certain things that it's just way better for the dog. It's just like the amount of feedback you can give the dog, the amount of clarity you can provide the dog, I think one of the big issues that we find in training a lot, especially because we're so good now at like reward delivery and placement, is that we're really good at telling dogs when they're right. Like we're really, really good at it. But if you've got these little moments of being right amongst big moments of being wrong, especially when it's reactivity or, especially like the main thing that I think where we're missing the prong collar. So like we use a prong collar all the time, in here for training performance dogs, dogs that are going to do cool stuff, high drive dogs. It's the tool that they need in order to give them the clarity that they so badly are asking for. And I think we know that in the working dog space, right? Like with the high drive dogs, especially, you get a lot of the really, powerful and impulsive Malinois or Shepherd or, whatever. They're constantly just like, I got to do something, got to be doing things all the time. And when they constantly have this big outwards focus, every now and again, they fall into, or we're able to manipulate them into the behavior that we want, and we reinforce them and we go, hey, that was it, good work, right? But what we know of those dogs is that that's often not enough guidance for them, in that they're like, yeah, okay, I'll continue to try and seek out being correct, but I have a lot of other interests, like I have a lot of other stuff going on, and I'm designed, like there's certain bloodlines of Malinois, there's like, man, I see in a level of detail that you just don't, right? So I'm seeing things, I'm taking in information all around me that you just aren't even aware of. So of course I'm fixated on other things, and yep, I'll intermittently be told I'm correct, and I'll do the thing that leads to that food more often, but I've got a lot of other stuff going on. And then when you give those dogs a clarity of like, hey, but I need you not to do those things, I need you to do this, what we often see, or more often than not actually, is that it's a channeling of that dog's focus. And those dogs that have the ability to be spilling drive kind of everywhere and putting it into, unhelpful and undesirable or even dangerous places, we can then say to them like, hey, don't do that, just do this one thing, and it's totally going to be in your interest because I'm going to pay you like crazy. Now, whether that leads to a game, whether that leads to food, whatever. The thing is, we then can layer that pressure as being a part of the game. And that's one of the cool ways. That's a big part of what I'm teaching people how to use a prong now, is to do it in a way where the dog's like playing a game of avoiding the prong in the same way that you might play hot hands or slaps with somebody. Now, in the working space, we know that, right? Like we're all over that. It's not my job to convince people who are competing with their dog. They're well and truly indoctrinated into that. But what I think most people don't appreciate as much as perhaps the working dog people do, is that same template can be applied, because your reactive dog that's all over the place and has these little intermittent moments of being successful and is getting the odd treat here and there while it's blowing up and it's taking in, it's worried about the car and it's chasing the guy down the street and it's worried about the man in the blue hat coming, and if it sees a staffy, you're fucked because it's going to go click. Like, that's the same personality trait as my Malinois has. He would be the same thing if I wasn't giving him the level of guidance that I am via negative reinforcement into behaviors and positive reinforcement out of the behaviors. So it can be tricky for us. And I think it's our role as educators, as trainers, as people who talk about this kind of stuff, is to explain like, no, like this is not some like performance dog tool. What this does is brings clarity to your dog's level of understanding. And it allows you to tell the dog like, hey, you're not quite there yet. We're on our way to being successful. And when you are successful, for sure, I'm going to tell you it's going to be worth your while. For sure, whether it's the game, the food, the toy, whatever, I'm going to make it worth your while, but I'm going to help you get there. Right? Like, because it's one of the things that I think we too often are like, come on, find the right behavior. Like, come on, take a wild guess. And if you're correct, then I'll tell you, right? Whereas we can, via these tools, be like, hey man, I need to just narrow your focus. I know that you're seeing a lot of shit going on. I know that you think that like barking at that other dog in this moment feels like a thing to do because it gives you a reaction, gives you a sense of feeling. You feel like you've achieved something. It spins a dial that you need spun right now. now, but I need you not to do that now. I need you to channel yourself into this one behavior. I'm going to help you into there via this tool. And then when you're there, I'm going to explode. You're going to be bottling yourself up in order to avoid the discomfort that could come of the tool. And so you trap yourself into that position, and then I'm going to let you explode out of it into the toy, into the game, into the reinforcer of some sort. So the level of clarity that brings is what most reactive or highly impulsive or problematic pet dogs need. But we know that from sporting and working dogs, right? Like that's a no-brainer. There's hardly a person that walks through my door that wants to achieve something cool with their dog that doesn't turn up with those tools, if not on their dog, in their kit, ready to go, because they know they're bought in. But it's the people who they're not dog people, they're just people with a dog that's got a problem. They're the ones that are now facing all this content, and you ChatGPT, ask it what it thinks of prong collars. I could do
Dude, I'm doing it right now.
It ain't gonna enjoy it.
What I hear you saying, Pat, is that we're honing down, right, to something that their awareness may be out here and over here. It's honing down, focusing by providing boundaries, by providing some guidance to where we need them to go. And once they find their way, dude, party time. Right.
That's right. And we do this ourselves. Like we do this with educating people. While we can go like, hey, here's what we need of you. But the thing is, like, kids learn in a classroom. They don't learn in the playground, because if they're in the playground, they're interacting with each other. They're looking at the basketball ring. They're doing all those things. So you have to narrow the environment down. And sometimes, like, when the environment can't be narrowed down any further, that's when you got to be like saying, hey, no, I need you to focus in on me. And this is the means by which I can communicate with you to do that. And so I think that's the biggest thing. When we talk about balance training, when we talk about the use of those sorts of tools, it's the having the ability to say to the dog, like, hey, I need you to bring your focus back into me. And when the dog does something that is undesirable, dangerous, all the different buzzwords we can say about things that we need to stop a dog doing, we then have the capacity to do it in a way where the dog goes, oh, right, got it. Like, I understand, rather than just being dragged away from it. And when you really start to understand dog training, this is one of the things where we talk to people and they're like, no, I would never use those tools. And you go, okay, well, tell me about how you deal with reactive dogs. And they explain it. And what they're doing is probably something that approximates bat or cat or something like that. And you go, okay, cool. But inevitably, by accident, you go over threshold. That happens. I'm pretty good with dogs. I can read a dog really well. I've fairly well, I've got a good number of dogs under my belt. I know what's going on. But I regularly accidentally go over threshold. In that moment, what do you do? And they're like, well, I call it quits and I drag the dog off. And I'm like, yeah, but if you knew, like dragging your reactive dog away from the thing that it's reacting towards, like that process of dragging it back builds frustration. It's going to create way more desire to go forward. So in that moment, when you went over threshold, you don't just get to call that like, oh, that's a bad rep. That rep sets you back significantly. Like, you're not just not making progress, you are losing a very significant amount of ground. And I think precious few people realize that, especially you got a dog on a harness and it starts reacting forward and you start dragging back. Now, I bet, like, if you're in this model, you're probably not an especially good dog handler. So chances are there's a fair amount of this kind of action going on the leash, which is exactly what I do when I want to build more power to go forward to something. So very often we see people, the way that they're handling their dog is creating the reactivity. And we know that because we spend a lot of time doing the same thing, creating that reactivity, that power to go forward, especially in the bite sports. When I'm posting a dog, like if I'm developing a young dog, my handler is holding the leash and I want them to be like on the harness, like getting dragged forward a little bit, drag the dog back a little bit, getting dragged forward a bit. And it looks exactly like what we see with our reactive dog clients absent the tools. It always... when I first left the army and I was doing a bunch of different clients, I had this guy contact me early days, and I was not great at protection stuff. Like the dogs I dealt with in the army knew what to do, right? What I was doing was not developing. I wasn't teaching shit. We're just getting bit. And so this guy, it was early days. He contacts me and says he wants me to have a look at some of the aggression with his German Shepherd. And I'm like, yeah, cool, man, I'll come around. So he tells me, yeah, I want you to just check out how the aggression's going. And I'm like, okay. So he gets the dog out. Get out of the car, kind of points at me. The dog starts reacting. He starts nagging it on the prong. He's like, the dog's bouncing all over the line. It's barking, going crazy at me. He's getting pulled forward a little bit, pulling it back. I can't hear what he's saying to the dog, but I can hear that he's giving the dog little niggles on the prong. I'm standing there watching it all go down. He puts the dog away and he comes over and he goes, what do you think? And I said, looks good. Like, I'd say that you're developing it pretty well. And he's like, what do you mean? It was terrible. It was a disaster. I was like, no, dog like reacted really nicely, barked really clean, like definitely wanted to bite me. Like I'd say the aggression's really good. And he's like, no, I'm trying to fix that aggression. I want that gone. And I was like, oh, sorry, mate. I've completely misunderstood. I thought we were here trying to develop that aggression, because literally everything you did was making that dog more aggressive towards me, and you were doing a great job.
Awesome.
Like, if you were looking, I said to you, man, I'm so sorry. I completely misunderstood. I thought we were talking about developing this dog for security work, and you're great at it. Like to the point where maybe, maybe can I give you some other dogs and you can make them as reactive as this one for me? Because literally everything you were doing was creating the reactivity. And so I think that's one of the things that, like, that's our job as trainers, is to show to people like, hey, some of these techniques that like if midway through you abandon the technique and you find yourself in this struggle, that is a bigger problem than you realize. That's not just that like you're no longer making progress. You're actually setting yourself significantly back because you're teaching the dog something else. And we have to explain to people, like, there is never a situation where the dog isn't learning. You don't get to say, oh, stop, hang on, don't take in any of this information. Like, don't appreciate any of these inputs I'm giving you. We're just resetting. That doesn't happen. So we have to then be like, okay, we went over threshold in this reactivity case, for example. Well, now we're into the space where we have to be dealing with this reactivity appropriately. Now, what that looks like is very different depending on the dog and blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different things on how that's going to go down. But I think that's the point of these sorts of tools for people who might not want to use them or understand them. Is that's our job, is to educate them and go like, hey, this is how you use that appropriately in this moment. And this is why. This is the information that the dog needs in this moment, because he's doing something very undesirable. It's dangerous. It's unsocial, whatever it is. And we need to communicate to that dog, like, hey, this isn't what we want right now. This is dangerous for you. This is dangerous for everybody around. I need you to understand that so that you don't want to display this behavior again. And in no longer displaying that behavior, you have to try something else because you exist, right? Like the dog doesn't stop existing when we say, don't do this. He tries something else. And then in that moment, we can say, don't do that either. Or more likely, he starts searching for behaviors that bring reinforcement, and then we pay him like crazy. And so the choice is there for the dog then. Then the dog's like, oh, sweet, got it, right? Like this leads to aversion and this leads to positive reinforcement. It's a pretty fucking easy choice for me. I avoid that. I go towards that. That's the very basis of training. That's the very basis of how we went from a single cell organism to the complex things that we are now, as we move away from things that are dangerous and towards things that are useful and helpful and sustaining. So like it's pretty easy when you look at it from that bigger picture, but I think that we too often can get sort of too caught into the weeds of it, because you look at a plonk hole and you go, that's terrifying, that's dangerous, right? Like that, I'm not putting that on a dog. You go, yeah, like work with me a little bit. Like I need you to help understand this, because sometimes the techniques of not using these things can worsen the situation.
Well, and knowing as a pet dog trainer, that's what's so important about knowing working dog sports. And that's why even with NAPOPO, and I don't ever talk about NAPOPO to my pet people, but it's given me the eyes to see how the hell they got there with their dog to be so reactive, just like you're talking about, Pat. Like you're pretty good at shit that you want me to fix. Like you did really good job at getting this dog to be a madman, dude. But let me, that's where it comes in of like, let me show you, how we got there, so we can, use and a lot of times with the pet world, we call it communistic type of rewards, very predictable, very, room service, bringing it to them. Like, we don't want the gasoline. We don't want the fire. We want to provide stability and structure. And then also the other point I want to make is some of this behavior needs to be met head on. Like, we need to address it. We need to show the dog, no, that's absolutely not what I want you to do, just like you're talking about. But this over here, yes, I want you to do that. Show them the contrast of that, and also providing them, with. That's why I love that we do have these sports that these dogs are, that the dogs love, and the tools that are used within it, but also realizing that sometimes these tools need to have a life, and the dog needs to graduate to the understanding of the proper behavior and like the behavior, right? And so that's why it's a training tool. And then I want to get into PSA too, and talk about your facility, Pat. And then also we talk about the PSA. I want to go and talk about Glenn's experience in Vietnam, because I thought that was super cool. But first, I want to go through some of these comments because they're getting long. You guys okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go back here, all the way back. First off, so got a shout out to Heather. She's down in Belize, and she was dealing with the hurricane down there. So I'm glad to see that she's here with us. What's up, Heather? Clayton, my man, Denise. Says the guy who with automated response on Instagram. We could use the AI for good stuff to free up time, right? Not just time, but mental real estate, mental.
I'm pretty transparent with that. Like because I did install an AI plugin on my Instagram that replies to story mentions and like people can comment certain things and I DM them stuff, but I always have the little robot emoji so that people know like this isn't me, this is just the computer sending you stuff. But Clayton Clayton's had a couple of conversations with my robot emoji.
Well, it's important to know that, hey, look, it's going to be labeled. It's starting to be labeled now, synthetic content, right? And it's going to be a must. Like if you're not doing this stuff, it's going to be very transparent. And just like I say, like I use AI to write my bios, everything that for these shows. It's just something that I still provide the supplementation of where and guide where I want the AI to go. But in the future, I know that it's going to be pretty easy. And that's the beautiful thing about being a dynamic human being, is that we can tell just by reading. And I know that it's going to get better. The AI capabilities are going to get better, but we can tell, man. And especially once we start to engage with people, we can tell if it's a robot. And I hope that that's always the case, but who knows what the future holds. From the human side, I agree with the connection, but from the dog side, maybe the dog might appreciate more timely results and consequences that an AI robot might deliver. Great point, Doctor. And I might not say I can see the robot, like especially these Optimus robots, walking the dog. I can see them doing stuff. Maybe we might put the foundation of the training or be part of it, but I think that robot's going to be part of it as well. And a quick shout out, you guys. Oh, whoops! Here, I don't know. Do you guys get Atlas down there?
No.
This is Dr. Robbie. This is his product, and this stuff is the thing. What I love the smell of it. But this is one of his products, and I love him. He has human products as well, and I know that you also have some products down there, Glenn, that your wife has. But this is what I recommend, and it just won the 2024, hasn't been announced yet, but Pet Product of the Year Innovation Award. Oh, let me put this down for Dog Hip and Joint Product of the Year 2024.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Highly recommend it. I'll put up a link to the doc's website in the comments down below. Check it out, you guys. And he also has Zeus for the human being, which is the same thing. And he also has like Tiger Balm for the dog. You put it on the joints, and then Ayurvedic medicine. So, and my wife uses this stuff, and she does not have to take. My wife has arthritis. She doesn't have to take pharmaceutical prescriptions for pain relief based on this rub that the doctor invented. So great job, Doc. Bethany says, I tried to use AI to regenerate RNA primers for my last job, and it just kept generating incorrect answers so confidently.
Yeah, they call that hallucinating, you know that, when it's wrong. Because it doesn't know that it's wrong. And if you don't, like when you use AI prompts, you have to give it an out of telling you it doesn't have an answer. Because if you don't say, like, if you don't know, don't make something up, it just makes something up. And it's within the industry, they call that hallucinating, in that it creates new data. It just makes assumptions that are often very incorrect. So that's whenever wild. You use AI prompts, you got to say to it, like, ask any clarifying questions. And if you put that at the end, then if it doesn't have a good answer, it will tell you I don't have a good answer.
Fantastic. Hello, fellas. Happy birthday, Glenn. Is it your birthday now, or was it yesterday?
Australia yesterday, USA today.
Oh, happy USA birthday, my man.
It's still my birthday. Thank you.
That's what I love about Australia. You guys are always living in the future.
Well, I just tell Narelle now that July is my birthday, so we just call it my birthday month.
Happy birthday month.
Yeah.
And then,
It was a day, then it turned into a week, and now it's just July.
do you see the private chat, Glenn? On the,
I do.
Can you put in Narelle's website for me in the private chat so I can make sure to share it for everybody, or Pat? Joe Hodge, who's my man. Hey guys, looking forward to watching this on the replay. And the majority of the people watch this on the replay. But if you guys are watching this right now, please hit the share button if you wouldn't mind. And if you're watching it on the replay, go ahead and hit the share button as well. Two of the smartest guys in dog. Nice. Thanks, John. Two, Pat and Jake. This is a good one, Bill.
To the smartest guys in Pat. I'll remember that, John. I'm writing that down. I'm making a note.
You know, Larry has helped me out because, dude, I'm a nice guy. And sometimes I can be swindled a little bit. And recently that's happened to me. Like I've had to call him to get his opinion on somebody in the industry. And I'm so glad that I have people like him in my corner. And the other thing is that because Larry was in law enforcement and Pat, you were in the military, right? You guys kind of have a different set of eyes than the lay person or the general public does. And just of the capabilities of what human beings can do, where I kind of have a rosy colored lens. And they say,
keep them, mate, keep them. It's a better world to live in. You know, like I feel really strongly about that. I think that if you can look at everything through rose-colored glasses, yep, it means you're going to get kicked in the dick every now and again, but your life's going to be way better the rest of the time. But don't like being jaded and looking at everything as a threat. It's a shitty life.
Well, it's good.
Yeah,
Good.
I think that's important in finding that balance, isn't it? Like we talk about being balanced people, then you have to have a healthy balance of knowing where your own guide rails are in life. And I just want to circle back to that, if I may, Bill, in talking about what we were discussing before with, Pat had a very good discussion about it. And this may be stealing something that he spoke about in an earlier episode in one of our podcasts, but I often relate the use of aversives and appetitives in training as like playing bowling for kids. You know, like the reason they put those bumper bowlers up is so kids don't strike out and the ball just rolls down the empty lane all the time. And suddenly the game becomes very frustrating for both, for everybody involved. When you're having a child that's having a tantrum in the alley, screaming and yelling and not wanting to invest in the game anymore, it's very comparable to how we work with dogs when we're using training. So I found that the inclusion of the tools that we're talking about, electrics, prong collars, slip leads, all of these sort of things have now made the game far more enjoyable. Now I can set those guide rails up so we can now play the game. And the idea of bowling is to, get all the pins down. And that's what we're trying to do with the dog, is we're trying to teach the dog, we're playing an important game together. We're developing an important relationship together. There's no point in making that ball roll down the gutter all the time and then having this turn into a tantrum where it's a fail for everybody. I can't understand why we got so far away from this discussion. But I will say, when we talk about skepticism and being suspicious, I will say that I am a suspicious person. I do look behind the curtain sometimes, and I often relate things to, like the fantastic world of the Wizard of Oz, where if you're so fixated on the character on the screen, you'll be awestruck by gazing and the magnitude of the character, where really the Wizard of Oz was just a frail old man pulling levers and pressing buttons and using trickery to trick people into this fantastic voyage. And I feel that that's happened to us a little bit of the way. And I feel like pharmaceutical companies are probably responsible for building this narrative that we're now living in. And I've run this by people before and they said, oh man, I don't know, it sounds a little bit suspicious. So I even ran it through ChatGPT, where I built it through an AI, where I was playing pretensies with ChatGPT. And I know I agree, somebody will come back to me and say, yeah, but Glenn, you've got to understand that, like Pat said before, ChatGPT could hallucinate and it could be just giving you the answer you want because you're building the narrative around it. So I tried to be as neutral as possible. But I got ChatGPT to pretend that it was the CEO of a pharmaceutical company specializing in pet management, pet behavioral management. And I went along the parameters of I spent some time in this, like, staging it out, bringing in private equity, bringing in shareholders, and, like the demands that they needed to see an increase in profits and so forth. And then I asked the all-encumbering question, like, what do I need to do? What's the next step here? And ChatGPT went on this great, fantastic voyage of building out this model where it says, I need to incentivize vets. I need to encourage dog trainers to start using and favoring SSRI. So it basically built all the model that I was funneling it into, but it said all the answers to me. And I feel that I'm seeing this happen in real time. I'm seeing people convert to the easy out of, we don't use tools anymore. We literally convert dogs to medications or euthanize. So there has to be some truth behind this, because if you look at it from your own, 50,000 foot view of life, and you were the CEO and it was your responsibility to fulfill your own needs of generating profits and to stuff money back into your private equity companies who have high demands, your shareholders who are basically saying, we want to see profits, not decreases. You've got to get men, women, children on your product. Then you've got to get, you just can't go along with this market and say, well, that's profitable enough now. Nobody's satisfied with that when they're in business. Everybody in business is looking at another successful year of growth. They want to see, 12% in their quarters going up all the time. Like, the banks want to see it. The shareholders want to see it. The private equity companies who are riding you, they demand it. It's not just, we're not living in this bubble of saying, oh, it'll be all right. We just have another year like we had last year. That's a fail year in business. Everybody knows that, who owns a company. Everybody knows if you're treading water, you fucked up, and your business, like, your shareholders are looking at it as a disaster.
You're dying.
So you're dying. You're drowning. Like, you're going under. Like having a parallel year is an absolute fucking disaster in business. So it's no wonder that they've gone, okay, well, now we need to get animals onto this. We need to switch this product in. We need to hit the market hard. So I'm seeing it. I have seen it. I've been in it enough for enough decades now where I've got to see transformative things happening where I'm looking at it and thinking, am I living through a matrix? Am I actually involved in a fucking horror movie here? And the other people who are usually a little bit jaded with this conversation, they haven't been in it long enough. They haven't seen how transformative it is. I even got to see this with, like kibbles. I went through a phase where all I used to feed my dogs was kibbles. Now I'm like pretty much anti a lot of the kibble on the market because I'm so scared of what it's doing to the dogs, because Narelle has really opened my eyes. And it's not just because we've got a product that we're trying to throw down people's throat. Yes, we have a business. Yes, we want it to be profitable. All of those things are true. But the reason we're doing it is because we're trying to escape that matrix of getting stuck in killing our dogs with, like a slow release poison. And people say, oh man, that's harsh. Like, what planet are you living on where you're trying to sell that? Do your own research. Like, it's there. It's available for you. If you're a reasonably intelligent person, which a lot of the people I know that are sitting in this group, and a lot of the people at home and a lot of the trainers that I'm involved in, they are very intelligent people. They're just guided not to do the research for them anymore. They're looking at the convenient world. And I often admit to people on a regular basis, I am not the poster child of Narelle's good work. I don't do all of the things that she recommends me. I don't exercise as much as she asks me to consider. I don't eat the foods or take the supplements all the time that she asks me to consider. Now, we almost have a regular discussion on this, because she'll say to me, you know how good you feel when you change your diet. You know how good you feel when you get back into exercise. And she is 100% right. But I am, I sabotage myself sometimes. I don't know why I do it. It seems to be some broken default wiring that I have in myself. I have transformed it at times, and I've gone into, all or nothing sort of mentality where I've decided that's exactly what I want to do. I want to switch it up. I want to make myself feel better. And I do. The proof is in the pudding. My joints feel better. My muscles start growing again. You know, like my weight starts reducing. The fog lifts in my head. I sleep better. Everything that she tells me is going to happen if I follow her advice, it happens. But then I get stressed and then I get lazy and then I fall back into a convenient cycle where I just think, yeah, I'll just eat that fast food, or I'll eat that sugary, delightful treat. You know, I'll have all those sort of things. And that's what we're doing to our dogs as well. We've just fallen back into a convenient narrative where we've let people develop the guide rails for us and they sucker punch us into this way of life where now we're falling victim to a predatory private equity, I dare say it, private equity cycle where they're basically saying, hey, man, you need to put profits before everything else. You need to have a 12% growth in each quarter, or else, you know, like we're coming to get you and we're going to close down your business, or we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's a scary thing. And that's why I'm saying before, like sometimes we got to have these uncomfortable conversations with each other to break free of these narratives that have been built for us and put in place for us to control us and to guide us into that. And I know, you know, when I hear myself talking back on this, I think I sound like one of those crazy guys on conspiracy channels where they're telling you the government's coming to get you and you need to, you know, do this and do that. But I research it now. Narelle shows me the science. She shows me the evidence and says, hey, it's there. Like people who are, you know, gifted people in science who don't have a bias, this is the information that they're putting on paper. They're not saying you should do this or this. They're just saying, this is the evidence I found out when I did the research. That's what I love about working with ethical people is they don't say, choose my side. What they say is just read the evidence. I looked at the research. Here it is. It's been peer reviewed by at least, you know, a dozen other ethical people around the world, and nobody. Roger Brandy said that, which I love about Roger Brandy's. Roger said, you know, like when I put a paper out, I got other people to read it and try and debunk it for me. And so far, people haven't been able to come back and say, Roger, you're wrong. And that's fantastic. That's the sort of people I want to get my science from. That's where I want to, you know, like develop my ethical standards and start building my foundations upon. I'm a faulted person. I have many faults. I have biases myself, which I try and eliminate on a regular basis. I try and look at it from other people's point of view. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. I have literally said that to people on many times when I'm training dogs, when I'm talking about food and nutrition for dogs or anything like that. I get some of my best information by other people's hard work. And that's just a fact. But that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do is live a better life through making sure that you remove the blinkers, you remove the convenience, and you look at it through the lens of people who aren't trying to build guide rails and try and suffocate you into a narrative that will ultimately have a net negative effect on how you live your life and how you have a relationship with your dog and the people around you and your customers. Again, relating back to a conversation Pat had before when we were talking about the use of aversives and so forth, or even reactivity. I put up a story on Instagram the other day. I've been working with a dog that's coming to me on a regular basis. For some reason, I'm getting so many aggression cases lately. And I had a brief conversation with Larry, and Larry got cornered into, you know, being the aggression management guy. And for a long time, I tried to escape it. You know, like I tried to get out of that box of being the aggression guy. But now I'm embracing it more. I'm helping people because they need help. And the people out here are just selling them the lollipop dream. So I'm getting back on board with helping people who have got aggression cases. And I put and the reason I'm saying all this, I put a video up of me working with a dog where I was sitting there and I was shaking a PSA thing. It's just a box of like a container of stones. And I had a can curtain and the dog backed away in the video and somebody saw it. And their take on it was that I made the dog afraid of it. And what I'm trying, and again, you know, it's a snapshot in time. It doesn't tell the whole story. I understood that. And I wasn't insulted that the person wanted to have that conversation with me. I was absolutely delighted to have the conversation. So first and foremost, I thanked them for bringing it to my attention that that's what they saw. And I said, can I build this out for you? Can I can I actually construct the conversation so you and I can get involved in something that I think is very important? So I inform them that dog's default was generally to come forward and show very hostile aggression. So what we did was we showed that dog that either A, remaining neutral, or B, backing away were very good opportunities for that dog. So and I told the owner, I said, if your dog wants to show, if he wants to show confidence towards this and investigate it, fantastic. If he wants to avoid it, fantastic. That's fine. Either way, what I want that dog to do is have another option other than to show aggression. And I want you to advocate for your dog. I want you to let him move away from it if he feels uncomfortable with the situation. If he wants to avoid the situation, perfect. That's far better because he's on a council order. And at one stage, he was almost facing a destruction order because he was showing violent aggression towards anybody that would do anything like that before. So this is, when people see that, they kind of think, oh, now you're making the dog avoid. Now you're making the dog scared of that situation. No, I'm making the dog show you I'm uncomfortable with this situation. I don't want to be here. I want to move away from it, and I want to create distance from the stimuli. I don't want to be this close to it. So again, teaching people to advocate for those sort of things. If dogs are uncomfortable, rather than the feeling, well, I'm locked in here, I'm on a 6-foot leash, I don't have the capacity to move away, I don't have the capacity for flight, I have to show fight because you've locked me into a situation and you won't advocate for me. You're pushing me forward. That's what I keep being told that I have to do. So when you open people's eyes and you give them alternate opportunities and alternate behaviors, then they have something else that they can choose from. And then they can say, yeah, now I can advocate for my dog. If he doesn't want to be here, fuck you. I'm not standing here. You don't have to pat my dog. Your dog doesn't have to come up to my dog. We can move away. So this handler that I've been working with, suddenly she's been given different opportunities than her other trainer told her. Or other trainer told her to stand her ground and literally hang her dog. Now the dog feels, I don't have anywhere to go. Fuck you. I've got to fight. I've got to show aggression. I've got to go toe to toe with you. So now we're seeing that dog. Like I said, this was a terrific conversation to have with this person who wanted to challenge me on it. They came away with a better understanding. They were very appreciative that I took time to discuss it with them rather than fight with them about it. And as trainers, I feel that that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we're allowing people to have conversations and also remember that we're in the mentoring business. As trainers, there's a lot of people out there who are getting so much mixed emotive conversations from people who have had 5 minutes in the chair. They don't know what they don't know, but they're so enthusiastic with their new Kool-Aid product that their mentor has told them that they want to sign you up. They want to get you on a subscription service of what they've been told is an effective and a kind strategy. And it's not that they're bad people. Sadly, a lot of this comes from a very good place. They want to make a difference. They want to change the world. They want to they want to advocate for their dogs also. But they're 5 minutes into the game. They just haven't had enough time in the chair to look at it from that 50,000 foot view and look down upon it and say, there are things that need to change here. This is really frustrating and confusing. Like I'm seeing so much wastage in dogs on how much destruction is happening around me and how many people are being bitten and how much councils are being involved and how much litigation is going on around me because I'm not allowed to use these effective strategies in managing my dog's behavior anymore. End of rant.
Well, I think it's important to reiterate that they're not coming from a place of maliciousness. They just don't have the eyes to see. They don't know. And I used to be them. I used to be that person that would, just like with you with the prong collar, Glenn. It's like, look, I used to, I can see your perspective because I used to be you, but then I was shown a different way and had more skin in the game. And the other aspect of what you're talking about is not only do these companies, they study human behavior, the companies that you're talking about, and they know way more about the behavior. In fact, a lot of them funded Skinner, a lot of them funded Pavlov, a lot of
everybody. They funded everybody. That's the scary thing is you don't realize how much control, how much power, how much influence. They've got it from every fucking level. like we're not talking about small people who have like a mum and pop business. We're talking about the people who really run things behind the scenes. And again, I know this sounds crazy. I know I don't want to turn a dog talking show into a conspiracy thing, but
no, that's good. You're good.
but we are being locked into a sinister narrative, and we're losing effectiveness. Like we're literally we're fighting a war with bows and arrows when everybody else has got semi-automatic machine guns, or automatic machine guns and missiles, and they can basically drone strike us from their chair, and we're still trying to shoot them with bows and arrows.
Well, it reminds me, have you guys ever heard of the book called Superclass?
No.
So this is it, man. This is the people that you're talking about. Superclass, the global power elite in the world that they're making, right? And it basically shows you how they've structured a web of influence through every single industry in the world, and how they control the world. And when you start to chunk it down, just like it says in this description here, each one of them is 1 in a million. They number 6,000 on a planet of 6 billion. So 6,000 people, that's a big corporation, but still that's manageable. Definitely, this is what you're talking about, Glenn, reminds me of this. And this was 2008, right? I remember reading this, I think back in 2010, 15 years ago. Maybe I got to read it again. But this is, and these are the people that fund the research. These are the people that understand behavior, like to a fundamental level of like walking into a store, where to put end caps, how many people are going to walk left, how many people where, and that's why products are paid to get placed to certain areas in these stores. And then if you have a good product, guess what? Just like with this product right here, let me show you this with this one. Got to shout out the Canine Ceuticals. I put up a link down below, and this is your guys' business, right?
Yeah, this is Norell's business.
Norell's business, yep.
So this was actually designed from Norell. Norell's done, like a bachelor on natural medicine, and she's got, a couple of different bachelor. She effectively, what I'm trying to say is she's a scientist. So she didn't just develop this as a matter of woo or something that she just wanted to put together to, generate a product just for profit's sake. Norell painstakingly put this together. It's some of the most superior stuff that you can actually find in the market. It's human grade. It's all organic. It's stuff that actually costs her a lot of money to put together, because I see how much it cost her. But as Norell wanted to do, she didn't want to just put something that, we're making in our own garage. Not that I'm poo-pooing that and saying it's no good and don't do that. Some people have to start off that way. But, she's working with people who are industry specialists. She's sourcing material from mostly around Australia, which is organic, human grade stuff. And the proof is in the pudding, really, because effectively what we wanted to understand is, does this stuff actually work? And a definition of greatness in my mind is not something that you allocate to yourself. It's something that your peers, your mentors, and your clients and colleagues attribute to you. And the great thing is that there's so many people whose dogs are having transformative lifestyles now. Not only to this, like it's changing their diets as well, but this is certainly helping. And I'm super proud of Norell for putting this product together. She doesn't stop working. It's a 7-day-a-week business. She's constantly researching, and she'll change anything that needs to be changed. She listens to all her client feedbacks. She answers her emails personally. I know there's people on here. I saw Rihanna on here before. There's a myriad of people who have been changing things and changing things up for their dogs. Pat's, his boy Remy's been on it. So, yeah, it works. It's great. And thank you to the people who have had some trial and error and used it and given us honest real-time feedback as well. And this one that I'm holding up here, which is the PA Plus, not the PA Plus, that's one of her flagships, but this one, that one there, Gut Protect.
Yeah, I put you on solo there.
That's her flagship product. That's that and PEA, and I mean, she's got collagen and pure SB and so forth. But some of these core products that she uses, those 4 that I just mentioned before, they have been incredible on what it's actually done for the physiology of dogs, and not just the physiology, but the psychology as well. Because if your body is hurting and inflamed, then so your brain therefore is reacting to it as well. There's a lot of scientific research that's been talked about between the gut brain balance and the vagus nerve, between the two of them, and how that has a comparative effect on your overall well-being. And if you're living a life like, which I am proof of myself, when I'm inflamed and when I'm not feeling well, that's where the brain fog starts. That's where I don't feel well. That's where my sleep is affected, and that's where my capability on a daily basis is affected, literally by poor choices in food and inflammatory edibles or whatever I'm eating at the time. But I do a very poor discussion on talking about this. Narelle's the genius behind this product. I just bumble my way through it. She understands the real science behind everything.
Well, I would love to do a live stream with her one of these days. I've voiced that as well before. But Narelle, official invite. Come talk to me about this stuff anytime you're willing to, or if you're willing to, and I would love that. So.
If you go on her Instagram, the Canine Surgicals Instagram, she does a weekly, like a 5-minute discussion called Thursday's Thoughts, where she actually pulls up the science behind a lot of this. So again, rather than just having a product that's filled with shit, talks about what true research has been done, peer-reviewed research, and she shows people and she walks them through it. She highlights the important part. She does all the reading for everybody. So if you want to know what it is and you want to understand what you're actually doing and giving to your dogs, or why things are happening to your dogs, Narelle does a weekly on that called Thursday's Thoughts. So go on there. It's all free. She has guides on Canine Surgicals page, which she spends forever writing and updating as new science has been presented. She'll put it forward for you. So she's incredible how much work she puts behind it. I can't be any more proud of her. She works harder than a lot of people I know bringing this to market. I mean, the work that she's been put in it, is we wouldn't see a profit on that for years, just on the amount of time she spends getting this to the level of her satisfaction. And she's one of these all or nothing people. She reminds me of Pat in a lot of ways. Pat's never satisfied. He always wants to revise everything and make everything better. And Narelle's very much like that too. They're very similar people.
Cool. Well, and one thing I was going to say is that another reason or another way that these big companies, they'll go in and just buy the company. Like they'll go in and purchase once these companies start doing well, start making a name for them. If they don't be careful, they get bought out, and that's the other aspect. Like a couple of companies here in America, really good quality pet food companies have just been bought out by Morris Corporation. And right now, nothing's really changed, but I'm leery.
Sorry to jump in on and interrupt, Bill, but the problem is when you get people that jump in and buy companies, what they do is they want to cheapen it. They want to find out, how do I bring the costs down? So even a lot of the companies that, like we've looked at in the past, like good kibble companies that actually do give a shit about what they're actually putting in there, reduced sugars, reduced carbohydrates, reduced crap, reduced fillers. The PE companies come back in and say, no, let's put them all back in. Like that's where we make profits from. So let's sneak it all back in. And that's, like I've used in the past, there was a product that was a reasonably good product. I won't name it because I'll probably get sued. But there was a reasonably good kibble on the market when I started training. And it was good. The dogs thrived on it because it had a lot of real meat product in it. But then over a period of time, and again, like seeing is believing. The stools were good with dogs, which is one thing that we always talk about is, like body health is relatable to stools.
Yep, and it's a progress report coming out of your dog every day.
Pretty much. So with kibble companies, with this kibble that I was using when this is like back in the late 90s, And the product was great. It was, dog stalls were good. I didn't have to have big cleanup in the morning when I'd come in to clean the kennels and train the dogs. I was literally just getting a pooper scooper and cleaning hard logs. Then they changed the product. It even looked different. It smelt different. It had an oily sort of base to it. Within days, the dogs got scours. Some of the longer term dogs there, I just thought, oh, maybe there's a bug in the kennel. We were spending heaps on veterinary, like getting the dogs on antibiotics. It was the fucking kibble. The fucking kibble had changed because these immoral bastards had got in there. They'd sold the company to people who basically go, okay, profits above people. Who gives a shit? They're just dogs. Let's put all these cheap fillers in. Let's just change everything. And the poor fucking dogs were literally suffering before my very eyes. I could see the transformation in them. Their enthusiasm for life just dipped because their diet had changed. Terrible. Just absolutely immoral what people do. And that's why I understand that it's, when people have got to show growth in business and so forth, I understand the lure and the desire, like they think, oh, but the money, like I've got to stay relevant. I've got to stay profitable. I understand that. I get it. I'm not here to tell people, like not to improve their life, but I'm just saying at what cost?
Amen. Well, it's just something to keep in mind, to do your homework and know that this is hard work to produce a good product.
Podcast and got preached about dog food.
What's that, Glenn?
I said, sorry for the audience who came to a dog training podcast and got preached to. Poor Pat sitting there just thinking, man, shut the fuck up.
No, I love it.
No, it's something that needs to be talked about. And then I want to talk to Pat too about, you're in your own space, man. Like that's something that's new for you. And just what do you think about that? And what does the future look like for you?
Mate, it's good. It's been a bit scary. I've been in here just over 12 months now. I was in America started last year, and I for a long time wanted to update my online course. Like my online course was, it was COVID, couldn't travel, couldn't do anything. Just put together a hodgepodge of footage that I had. Really luckily, right at the back end of 2019, just before COVID, I did a seminar at Glenn's place, and he filmed it for me. And so I had that footage and, mixed with a bunch of other stuff, I was able to come up with an online course. And while it was really well received and never got any bad feedback about it, I was never very happy with it. I just thought that it didn't have as clear a learning pathway as I would have liked. It wasn't as clear as I would like. It didn't flow the way I want. And the information was never, they were all the bits in it were designed to be standalone pieces of information. They were never designed to form a curriculum. And so it was always the intention to make something better. And I kind of assumed that I would be able to get that footage from events because I teach these seminars and boot camps and stuff like that. And so at a 2 or 3, 4 day seminar, I'm presenting a lot of information. I'm working a bunch of dogs. At a boot camp, it's 5 days. It's the same. It's a lot of information on dogs. And I just sort of have been banking that footage for years, thinking I would be able to turn that into an online course. And then I was in Las Vegas. I was doing a seminar with Michael Carpenter there, and something really cool happened with the dog. To be honest, I don't remember what it was, but I was working a dog and I thought, oh, that's fucking great. I'm so happy I got that on camera because that's gonna for sure be a really important part of this course. And then I go back to my room and I check the footage, and it didn't work. Like the audio wasn't working properly. It was mostly out of focus. Like it just wasn't going to work. And so I realized in that moment, I was like, nah, if I'm going to do this, I have to make it specifically, and I need a space to do it. So I just came back to Australia, and I had avoided having my own shop for a long time just because I didn't want to back myself into a corner of those overheads, and the type of training that I do, I still travel a lot, and I go to people to train a lot, like when I'm working for government agencies or whatever, like I have to go to them. And so they can't really come to me. And so I had avoided that. And I just realized, listen, I'm not going to be able to achieve what I want to achieve unless I do this. So I found this space. It's really close to my house, so I can walk here. The building is magical. That sounds ridiculous, but anybody that's ever been in here will tell you, like, it's haunted as fuck, this place. So where I'm in is actually, it's a warehouse in the cutout of like what is a pretty urban block in the center of it. And what it actually is just up there's a pub that was one of the sort of first buildings here. It was built in the like 1880s, I think. And this is the horse stables of that pub. And so, this is the shop. Yeah. So this is me zipping around the place. And so it was a CrossFit gym, and it was friends of mine before then that had a CrossFit gym. And when I knew they had outgrown it and were leaving, you can see I've got a black eye in that video. I can't remember how I got that. Something. Oh, a dog bit me in the. Yeah, that's right. I got headbutted by a dog. Anyway. Yeah, so I got this place and started filming. And so like I've got part of that online course out now. People can check that out. It's called The Wave Tops. It's on my website, seriousdogbusiness.com. We did a bit of a rebranding when I got here. Like the Operant Canine is still my company. That's the parent company of the whole thing. We just got a trading name of Serious Dog Business because I wanted to have a name for this place. That it's a physical place. And it's great, mate. I just make, like really what it is, if I'm totally honest, is it's just a very expensive man cave. So like I hang out here all the time, and it's expensive. I'm in Sydney, where like if I told you what the rent was, you wouldn't believe me if I showed you the footprint of the place, because I'm in Sydney, right? Like in the city. So it's ridiculously expensive, but I took a big risk in doing that. And to make the course. And so my plan over the next few months, like I've been in here 12 months. The course is the first part of the course. Yeah, there it is. You can see if you go to, like I still haven't even finished building the website. Like this is what a disaster I am. But if you go to the top there, you can see there's the courses. The seminars one is just events, but over there, the courses tab.
Courses, there we go.
And so that like, the overview is available. The wave tops is the one that is the sort of most one that's available, and the deep dives I'm still working on. And so my goal, I've got another 12 months in here. This whole block is going to be redeveloped, so eventually they'll kick me out. But my goal is to basically record everything that I know. And so I've been making all this content. I'm training people in here. We hold club in here. Other people use the space to train. And the goal is over the next 12 months to really try and bank basically everything I know into a course and have that available for people. I'm really trying to lean into what I think is my best skill set in educating others. And so what I enjoy about the dog space and the gap that I think I fill is that I think there's lots of people who run courses, online courses. People are really accustomed to learning that way. And I think that it is a great way to learn, so long as it can be supplemented by real world stuff. Like you still have to get your hands on a dog, right? Like everybody knows that if you learn karate via VHS, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you at your first, at your first fight. But you
I've done that.
Yeah. But if you're supplementing what you have access to in the real world with other online stuff, then, that's a real recipe for success. That's how I learned for the most part. I think most of us have probably accustomed to, getting access to people all around the world and digesting their information. And so my goal is to lean into that. And I think that the gap in the market that I feel is that, I'm not really an expert at anything. I'm a generalist. And so what I provide people is the sort of the top-down look at dog training, where you can go to you can get people's healing courses, and they're going to do a way better job of teaching you how to get a dog to heal than I could ever dream of doing. And there's people that will teach you specific things. But what I want to teach people about is the overarching picture of dog training. And so the course that's available now, the Wave Tops, I'm really, really happy with it. Like like I said, my old course was designed, like it was thrown together and it was good. People were happy with it, but this one has a proper learning pathway, and it was recorded to be a course. It wasn't just footage that I had of me doing something else. I recorded it specifically for this exact purpose, and it has a clear learning pathway. And the way that I teach is via storytelling. And I think that we, in our space, we really have to understand all the science, but what we don't need is to have the references from the studies and be able to, recite the paragraphs, because I think once you start doing that, you tend to, when you start trying to convince people to do that, you lose them a bit, right? So my thing is we go, okay, here's the information. I've distilled that into something that's tangible and actionable for you, but I've put that into a story story. And for the most part, my course is just a series. The one that's available now is just a series of personal stories through which you'll understand dog training. And the goal of doing it that way is that people then go like, oh, like instead of going, okay, negative reinforcement is this, and the rat does this when Skinner says this, like understanding it to that degree, I think can sometimes be unhelpful. And so I think there's people in our space that understand the science not at all over here. And there's people who are maybe, where's my hand here? There's people who have gone a bit too far and get very technical to the point where, here we go, look at that. We've got people that maybe go too far and then you get lost in it and it no longer becomes helpful. You can't actually action anything because you've got too much information that just causes blockages. So what I've attempted to do is through personal storytelling, create a way for people to really understand that, where we go, really want to understand the effects of using pressure in an attempt to punish a dog, but it turns out you're using negative reinforcement. Okay, I've got a story about that. And it's a funny story that involves me getting blasted by a dog, like bitten and knocked unconscious because the dog sped up instead of slowing down, and all these sorts of things that will help people understand it. So that's the plan is I want to keep making that kind of content. I want to try and create a bit of a hub of balanced dog education and provide that information to people at a price where they can afford it. And that's important, but that's really challenging. Like, I've got my own dreams of wanting to provide that information to people. I want that to be accessible to as many people as possible. I want it to be at an affordable price. I want people to have access to really good knowledge. And I want that knowledge to be actionable and tangible. But then, we're in the real world of you've got to be like, I can't make that free. Like daddy's got to pay his bills, and the bills are plenty. So, having this space, like I say, it cost me like the rent alone is nearly $7,000 a month just to have this building. Yeah,
Dude, Evan put out a guess for how much it is. $200 a month plus a hand job. So that's wrong, Evan. No, right. Sorry, but
$7,000.
That's crazy, dude. $84,000 a year.
Second most expensive country in the world, apart from Hong Kong.
My house is on the same block, and it's on a postage stamp size footprint, and it's a more than $2 million house. So like Sydney's expensive, man. If you say you get into like one of the property websites and search for a house and put your budget of $1 million, there will be no results in Sydney. There's nothing you can buy here for less than $1 million. It's a house. You can get apartments and stuff, but you can't get a house for less than $2 million for less than $1 million. So anyway, that's what I'm up to, mate. And I'm really enjoying it. It's been a little bit overwhelming. That's a lot of hand jobs here. Especially when you're giving them for free, Evan. But I think it's a challenge that I've taken on and I'm enjoying it. And I love being in here. Like I said, everybody that's ever been in here, it's a running joke, but it's very haunted building. Like and believe what you will about that. Like, I don't think that when I say that it's haunted, like I don't believe that there's the ghost of a dead person here, but there's an energy in this building that is very difficult to describe. And everybody that's been in here will tell you about it. So it's well, but it's for the most part good. There's one guy here who I've had to develop a deal with, and we've been fine ever since. But for the most part, it's a really great vibe in here. I love it. We have club in here one day a week, and my kids come down in here and build obstacle courses and play around, and I'm training dogs in here all the time. And that's one of the best things, is that having a dedicated space, especially for the type of training that I'm doing, a lot of bite work and stuff like that. It just has made my life a 1,000 times easier having that dedicated space. And I love being here. But I'm at a business-wise, to sort of show people behind the curtain, I'm at sort of a bit of a tipping point where I'm getting to the point where I need to like start employing people or something like that. I've got a guy making some content for me, just like editing together reels and stuff like that, and helping me do some editing stuff. And that has been such a massive help that I'm now thinking, okay, what else? Like, how else can I find ways to employ people to bring them in? And I'm at sort of a bit of a tipping point in the business where I can continue going the way I am, but taking a couple more big steps won't work. I've got to go big. And so anyway, that's for me to figure out, but I'm loving it. It's really good. And I'm getting to train a lot of really cool dogs. One of the things I love the most about here and what I'm doing in trying to bank a lot of content is that if I hear about a person with a dog, say like in the dog sport community, I hear about somebody that's got a dog that's having an issue, I'm able to reach out to them and be like, hey, I know how to solve that issue. Come around. And they're like, oh, I can't afford it. I'm like, I'm filming it. I'm not going to charge anything. What I get from it is the content, and I get to show other people, and I'll sell that content to other people. But you've got an interesting problem for me to solve. Come around. Let me solve the problem. Let me show you how to do that. You get that outcome. I get the footage of it, and I get to make the content around it. So, like that to me is the ultimate business model. I love being able to do that because I love being able to provide that service to the people that I can. Come around, let me train your dog, and then I can then help, untold number of people via showing them how I did it with that dog. So for me, I love that. And as long as I can sustain that, that's what I want to do in this place.
Who is your ideal client for serious dog business?
That's a good question. So I've been trying to define that myself. I don't know sort of like where I fit into the space is I think that for me, my clients are dog training enthusiasts, right? So like my clients are not people who have a problem with their dog for the most part, right? Like they're not the average, Rihanna comes and trains. Like my clients are not the average pet dog owner. They're dog training enthusiasts. Now, they're probably somewhere on that journey. Like a lot of them probably have the dog trainer fairy tale where they've got a reactive dog or something like that. And in the process of having to deal with that, they've become training enthusiasts and now they're dog people. But like all my clientele are dog people. So people who are really into training and, have got the bug for it. I serve them and I educate them into their career. And then people who are professional trainers, I also have a lot of overlap into there because I can help a lot of people who have maybe been indoctrinated into one particular type of technique, or they were educated by a particular person. And so they're good and they're competent and they do really well, but they sort of need access to the bigger world of information. And I'm pretty good at distilling that to them. So for the most part, the majority of my clients are pet dog owners who are trying to do something cool with their dog. They're dog sport competitors who are looking for like a bit of an edge, or they're newer to it and they're looking for a mentor, someone who can help them a little bit with that kind of thing, as well as professionals who are, maybe in their first 5 years of their professional journey, although there's plenty of people who are much further deep into that and still find value in what I have to say. Then my sort of clientele dips when I enter my peers, right? There's plenty of people who, of course, cause me and all the other people the imposter syndrome, anxiety. I can't put this out because I'll be judged by somebody else who's my peer. But then, so they're not my clients, they're not going to pay any money. But then oddly, and this is one of the sources of my anxiety, is I then tap another market of people who are actually probably way better than me on the tools, but they appreciate the way that I teach. So, I've had people come to my boot camps. Yeah, I've had people come to my boot camps who have, won national titles at the sports that I barely pass at. And I say like, hey, what are you doing here? And the answer is, I appreciate the way you teach. So like, I don't expect to learn anything about the dog's part of it from you, although you never know, right? But what I am going to learn is how you communicate this information to these other people in the class. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, sweet, perfect. I can provide you that. Like my anxiety about providing you value has disappeared because I'll give some really good explanations and you can bank those and you can use those on other people. So that's my clientele, mate, it's all dog enthusiasts and professionals.
Beautiful. Well, and this leads me to a couple segments, but first off is like people that aren't there to fuck spiders. Did I use it right, Glenn? What the hell? What does that mean? So just so you guys know, but Glenn, I was listening to a Canine Paradigm. And you were there to learn dog training, and you're like, we're not here to fuck spiders. And I was like, did I hear that right? And I rewound it, and I'm just like, I gotta ask Glenn about that. So what does that mean, dude?
You would not believe the amount of reach that has had and how many people have contacted me. Like it's amazing what people will trigger on, and not in a bad way. Like people were so found it so humorous that I had so much reach out after that episode, and it just had a flow-on effect where people were making jokes about it in the discussion group. It's one of those things that, it's like the Hawk tour thing that just suddenly goes viral.
Yeah.
Well, like I had my messages blowing up, and I'm thinking, why are all these people contacting me? Like,
okay,
who
good.
are
I'm
all
not the only one. Okay.
And it was I'm not here to fuck spiders comment. It's not a original by me. It's just a saying that people in Australia say, and not everyone says it. It's it's just one of those. It's kind of what you call an ockerism, I guess. And ocker is like hardcore outback sort of Australian comments. Like instead of saying I'm going up the road, in ockerism you'd saying I'm going up the Frog and Toad. So bushies and outback people come up with these comments. So I'm not here to fuck spiders. Literally, yeah, it primarily means I'm not here to muck around. Like I'm here to
No
get on with
kidding.
the business.
And it's from a
Yeah.
sergeant
There you go.
in
It's
the
from
Australian
the
Army. Not here to fuck around.
Yeah,
Okay. I should have just
Yeah.
Googled it, dude. I just thought to Google it.
Yeah, it gets used a lot by people in the army. I don't know the origin of it. I'm not sure that that's accurate. When I tried to look it up one time, it said that it was unclear. But it gets used a lot in the army. Oi, we're not here to fuck spiders. Get on with it, right? Like that's. And I still remember the first time I was like, "What? Like what?"
Yeah, I was like,
I'm
did
not
he
here
just
to
say
fuck
that?
spiders.
Did he
Who
just say
is
we're
here
not
to fuck
fucking spiders? Like,
Yeah.
I was thinking, do we not have a lot of arms, like multitasking? That's what I thought of originally.
Yeah, who knows?
But then,
And then
so-
there's the clean version. People will say we're not here to fornicate with arachnids. That's the other one.
I kind of like
Casey
that one
said
too.
the other day. Casey. Yeah.
Did he?
There's
Okay.
another one that often gets a lot of interesting feedback, which is I'm as dry as a dead dingo's donger. And that means I'm thirsty.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met you guys a long time ago. I was on the Canine Paradigm podcast when we were in Florida, I believe, when you guys were at the IACP. I was with Jay Jack, and Jay Jack's here too. And Jay Jack says, "Hey," and then he also says, "You can know the world as a pile of shit and people are horrible and still have a ton of fun." Just
Yeah, that's
in
true.
life, right? Totally. So
I did want to say something about that too. There was a very important pivotal movie for me and for many people back in the day, which was the original Matrix movie.
yeah,
And there were several. I know it's based in fiction, but it's like that.
Is it, Glenn? Is it?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that there's a saying that truer words are spoken in jest, and sometimes some of these fictional movies really have pivotal moments in them. And there was a conversation between a character called Cypher and the original Smith, and primarily he was ratting on his colleagues, and his reason for doing that was that he wanted to be plugged back into the Matrix because he was sick of the realities of life, like knowing what he knew and living the shitty life that he was living because he knew the truth. And he said, and the comment was, I know that this piece of steak that I'm about to put in my mouth is just made up of ones and zeros, but like when I eat it, I can taste the flavors. Words to the effect of, I know I'm butchering the comment. And his line was, and what I've accounted this to is that ignorance is bliss. And that's if you are ignorant to these things, and when you do tune out to them and you don't spend so much time worrying about it, it's quite a good life that you can have. Like you can look at it with those rose-colored glasses that we were talking about a little bit earlier on, where you can tune out to it. And I do subscribe to that as well. Like too much reality is sometimes not a good thing. It can send you into a negative headspace where you just spin out of control. So I do find that you do also need to, there is the reality of good things as well. And that's the comment there where he's just about to chow down on that bit of steak. But I really do feel that, again, to reflect on that whole conversation that we started earlier on in this topic, was a balanced perspective is a very important perspective, is not to just to cement my point here a little bit further is when COVID happened and a lot of people were sending me regularly the conspiracies around COVID and the vaccines and so forth. Now, I truly believe that there was some shit going down. I truly believe that there was some evil that our governments were all conspiring to do. I truly believe that, but I don't want to know it on a regular basis. I don't want it served up to me. I don't want to continually get information about it on a regular basis. I know there's some terrible people out there in the world. I know that there are some mandates that are just beyond insane, but I don't want it all the time. And I don't want to sell that to people all the time as well. Like sometimes I hear things coming out of my mouth when I'm having conversations and I think I'd tune it down. Like this scares people and it horrifies them, or it disenfranchises people and it alienates people. It creates a narrative that people may be just not ready for or are sick and tired of hearing. So that point that Cypher made in that movie when he said that, and I remember seeing it all those years ago, like I went, pow, and something popped in my head about it. And that's what did send me on a bit of a crusade to look a little deeper into things and research things a little bit more and ask more questions about what's going on in the world, and not just, bumble my way through it, but be invested in understanding the deeper realities in it. Like I was looking at Pat's courses there where he's got it lined out, like an overview, the wave tops, and then deep diving into things. And I think a lot of times people have an overview of things, but they don't get into the wave tops, and they certainly don't want to know about the deep dives, because sometimes the deep dives are revealing. They're a little scary and they take you to a place that you're uncomfortable with. But I like being involved in uncomfortable pursuits now, because I need to feel the realities of things and understand the depth of things sometimes, and not just be conveniently led, if that makes sense. Yeah, there it is there, the overview, the wave tops and the deep dives. I think that's a that's a nice narrative for just for educating yourself and feeling a little bit more enriched. And I also understand that some people don't want to do that.
Well, you got to know
I made
that
those photos.
Yeah, I see that you painted those yourself with with your finger paints. No, but with the overview, it's very comfortable. You got a great view of everything, and then when you get down to the wave level, you could get batted around a little bit. But once you get into the deep dive, you're at risk for imploding into smithereens at any second, and that's where that deep ocean dwelling ship came from right around the corner. My wife's showing me her leg out the window, just so you guys know. My dogs are going to go nuts because mom just got home. And it's just important that we sacrifice our comfort. And sometimes we get too comfortable with the overview, and we don't want to go deep dive, because we're going to experience comfort, and we could come undone. And that might be the point of exploring it. Hold on one second, you guys. Let me mute you. Well,
the reason I made it that way, Matt, like on terms of that course, is like that's the learning path that I want people to go down. Like I think that it's important that you first sort of look at it and go like, okay, here's the bigger picture of information. Here's a bit more detail, and then here's the actual details after that. Like here's the actual like the weeds that you can get into. And I think that certainly in dog training, if you try and go like the reason I'm laying it out that way is if you try and go straight to those deep dives, you get overwhelmed, right? Like, and I think that you've got to immerse yourself slowly into those things. And I think that's, as an educator, I sort of reflected on my own journey in learning this stuff. And every time that I think that we overwhelm people by giving them too much detail and information without them knowing where to file it. So that's why the course is designed like that. And I hope that that's how people consume it when they purchase the course. They get access to, like, for now, while the Wave Tops is the only one that's available, they get access to that overview. And my hope is that people watch the overview first and you go like, all right, this is dog training and how Pat thinks about it. And then we start to flesh it out. And then when I'm finished doing the deep dives and they come out, then it'll be, okay, let's go into even more detail. Because I think that if you just go to the details, like that's cool, you can understand those details, but then you don't have a mind map of where that goes, right? Like you don't have a place to like, okay, I understand that piece, but what's its relevance and how important is it in comparison to other things? Like where does it fit? And so that's the goal of laying things out like that, is that it's a slow exploration and you can understand the details as you go.
Well, I want to get into PSA, you guys. How are you doing on time, both of you? Can you chat for a few more?
Yeah, I got a little bit more time.
Oh, look, I got it. The automatic emoticons. Glenn, you good for just a second or not a second, but a few more? Okay. I've been really intrigued by this PSA, you guys. I've never done it. Okay. But I've watched you guys, and I watched my friend Adrian, and I watched Casey, and I talked to Will from Dog Training Is My Passion. And I've talked to Jonathan Katz, right? And
all good people.
It's really intriguing me. Like my next phase, my next season of dogs, I might get a working dog. Like I might get into this because of what you guys are doing. And what exactly is this happening, man? Like Will said it in a way that he's like, look, it's an individual experience per you and your dog with this whole sport. And I know this is a very abstract type of topic, but what's going on with PSA with you guys, and why do you love it so much that you're traveling the world to experience this sport?
Do you know what, man? You know how there's that running joke about how do you know if someone does CrossFit? Well, like they'll tell you.
Or vegan.
And it's the same as vegans, right? Now, the reason that is because most vegans and most CrossFitters, like prior to becoming a vegan or prior to taking up CrossFit, they perhaps just led like a fairly normal, unhealthy existence, right? And then they take up CrossFit and very quickly they're indoctrinated into that and their life improves, right? Like they get fitter, they get healthier until doing CrossFit, they get injured. So with vegans, it's the same. If you're smashing Maccas every day and then suddenly you decide, okay, I'm going plant-based, it's not that plant-based is good, it's that not the norm is good. And so for me, and to an extent, Glenn as well, at the moment, I'm a bit like a vegan CrossFitter with PSA, and that I think that PSA is a little bit the answer to many people's problems. And the problem is that I think that dog training can be really stagnant, it can be really boring, can be really sterile. And I think that, PSA is just another bite sport. It's not so, it's a little bit different than some of the others, but it's still just another protection sport, right? But what it is, it's probably one of the more modern ones. It has much less tradition, and so there isn't much doing of things the way that Grandpappy did it, just because Grandpappy did it that way, right? Like there's less tradition, because like while I enjoy some tradition around things and I have a respect for it, I think that locking yourself into a prior model that was appropriate for people at a different time is a fool's errand. I think that you've got to stay up to date with what's going on. And so PSA is only just over 20 years old. I think it's 22 or 23 years old. It's a protection sport that's in two phases, where there's the protection, which you have to pass before you go on to the obedience. But the biggest difference about PSA is that it's a mostly surprise scenario-based game. So in the level 1, you've got your 3 normal scenarios, and then a surprise scenario being that it's going to be one of 5 different ones. And in the level 2 protection, you've got 3 normal scenarios, and then a true surprise scenario where you don't know what it's going to be. There's just component elements. And then by the time you go to the level 3, it's all surprise scenario based. So what I love about PSA as a game itself is that it is the true generalization of training. Now, it's still a sport. Because it's a sport, there's rules and there's parameters. It has to be judged. So, of course, like a dog that is developed to do well in the PSA ring, it still has limitations, right? Because the decoys present in a particular way. So, like, it's still a sport. I'm not saying it's the real deal. And some of the, like, we always laugh about it here in Australia because one of the, the level 2 call off, as well as, one of the level 1 surprise scenarios involves the dog in a static position, usually in a car or truck or something like that. A decoy closer to the dog than the handler points downfield at another decoy and says, that guy just stole my wallet. And then you go, oh, okay, mate, I'll fucking totally believe you that random dude downfield has stolen something from you. And I'm just going to, while he's running away, mind you, just blast him with my protection dog. So, like, it's still not realistic scenarios. Like, no one's fucking doing that. Or sure as shit, we're not doing that in Australia. Your dog's getting taken off you for life if you do that, right? But the point of it is we're generalizing the training. So it's not sterile. It's not like this is how it goes down. It's that if you're going to teach your dog to change position, your dog should understand the command to change position no matter what else is going on, right? And that's the point of PSA, is that, like, I just got my level 2 title, and in the change of position part of it, the people think, oh, it's challenging because there's 2 decoys on the field. The 2 decoys during the level 2 obedience are trying to draw a bite from the dog in a way. They're trying to distract the handler. So that's hard, right? Yeah, it is. But during the change of position, I had to lay on a tarp and I was rolled up in the tarp like I was some kind of burrito on the field, and then give the changes of position. And then when I'm completely rolled in a tarp laying flat down on my belly, I have to recall the dog to the heel position. And so that's the kind of stuff, like, I didn't know that was coming. That's just a random thing that the judge put in on the day. And so my training has to hold up to that. My training has to be generalized to the point where the dog goes like, okay, this is some weird shit that's going on here, but I understand what you want from me and I'm going to do it. And I think that's why I like PSA more than other sports. And I think it's important to point out, like, I'm a dog sport coach essentially, right? And so I love them all. And if I had the time and space, I would do nothing but compete in the various sports. I would have multiple dogs and they would be, trained appropriately for IGP, for Mondio, for Ring. Like, I would do all these things. I love them all. But the reason I've chosen PSA is because I enjoy the surprise scenario nature of the game. And I think that it results in a better generalization, like a more robustly trained dog that can't just read the play and go like, what's happening here? Okay, I know what to do. The dog has to really be following instructions because the play shouldn't be readable by the dog. So I love that. The other thing that I really like about PSA and why I have taken it upon myself, thankfully with the help of many, many others, like, I don't want to try and say that it's all me, but to get it going in Australia is because there's way less barriers to entry than in any other game. So okay. the issue with a lot of the sports, especially the FCI run sports, is that you've got to have the right paperwork on your dog. Now, the thing is, and this will upset some people, watch your comments go fucking ballistic. You show me a really nice working Malinois with an FCI pedigree, and I'll show you a fake FCI pedigree, right? Like, it doesn't. So
it's like anything else, forgery.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think that one of the weirdest things that, if we're going to talk about conspiracies or whatever, I think one of the weirdest things is that human beings love to fucking have masters. And so the idea that the FCI is going to tell me via the ANKC here in Australia what I'm allowed to do with my dog is a fucking joke. The idea that they can tell me what games I can play, like, not like what I can do ethically, but what games I can play with my dog. And the way that they'll then insist that if you want to play our games, you have to cut your dog's balls off. I'm like, fuck off. Like, I'm not doing that. And
really?
So that's the beauty of PSA is that we don't even give a shit what kind of dog you got. Like, your dog could have 2 ears, 1 eye, no tail, and limp around on 3 legs. If he likes the game, he's welcome. He can play, right? And that's the same for people. Like, there's no cutting people out. You got an animal cruelty charge? No worries. You can't play. But until then, you're welcome, because some Jono said that you did something wrong. Well, let's fucking find out what why is his opinion worth anything, right? When the law gets involved and says that this guy can't own dogs, no worries. PSA will tell you to fuck off. But until then, you get to play. So there's much less bullshit involved in PSA. It's still people, there's bullshit everywhere. There's people, right? People will always find a way to make bullshit, but there's much less. PSA is designed as a very small government. So like I'm the assistant regional director of Australia, which means I report to Jerry, who's the executive director. He's in charge of like, the international regions, but I'm in charge of what happens here in Australia. And the level of my power is minuscule. Like as the regional director, all I do is just make sure that everybody's cooperating and that like trials aren't being organized on the same weekend and shit like that, right? Like I'm not in a position to tell people what they can and can't do. And we've had people here in Australia who have tried to get me to do that. They've required, because of problems within their organization, have said you have to kick this person out of your organization. And the answer is, for starters, go fuck yourself, you don't tell me what to do. But second, even if I wanted to, I don't have the power to do that because like PSA is designed in that way. It's very small government. It's like the PSA, the headquarters dictates what a trial looks like, and any other like actual PSA registered event, they tell us what that has to look like and how that has to go. And there's very strict rules around that. But the rest of it, they're hands off. They don't get involved, which is what I love about it. It's more back to the base. And so we've been pushing to get it going in Australia. We very nearly collapsed during COVID. That was a very difficult time for us, but we've gotten the ball rolling. And so, like I said, there's been plenty of people that have been involved in doing this. Like I'm definitely want to acknowledge that this has been a massive team effort, but we've finally got PSA running really well here. I think we're at 6 or 7 clubs here in Australia. That's growing. They're constantly expanding. We've had 2 trials this year where there'll be a mock trial in a couple of months and then another real trial. So we're aiming to have 4 trials a year and develop a functioning league. And the beauty of it is it's a proving ground for training, which I love. I think the idea of like people being able to be tested. It's one of the things. I talk a big game about dog training. I think I act like I know what I'm talking about. There has to be somewhere for me to prove that. And so I just got to do that a month ago. I got to hit the field for the first time in 5 years with my dog doing PSA because the way that it worked out was we didn't have the ability to judge at the level that I was at, but we brought out Janet Edwards and I got to demonstrate, I pass, I get my level 2 title and I get to show like, hey, I know what I'm doing. Like here's the evidence. I hit the field. I showed you. I took all the tools off my dog. Me and my dog walk onto the field nude. Well, he's nude. I was forced to wear clothes. And so we walk onto the field and away we go. We show like, this is our training and this is how it holds up under the circumstances of a situation created by the judge, not by me. Because what we see a lot is people go, hey, come see how good my training is at my facility under these very strict conditions, right? So it's like, no, come and see how good my training is at a field that my dog's only been to. We had open field day the day before. This is the 3rd time my dog's ever been to this place. Come and have a look at how my training holds up in a scenario that's not designed by me, that's designed by somebody else. And I get told the day of, this is the things that your dog's going to do. And I have to demonstrate that. So that's what I like about PSA. I think that there's less bullshit. There's less barriers to entry for the people and for the dogs. And I think the game is cool. Like I think, like I'm a dog sport enthusiast. You'll struggle to find too many people who are as obsessed with the idea of and the cultivation of dog sport as I am. But even I get bored at an IGP trial. Like even I am like, oh, okay, the dog's going to walk around the thing again. Is it like, okay, like, and it's beautiful and I love it, but it's not a spectator sport. And I think that within the way the world works these days is you've got to create things that people will enjoy to watch. Otherwise you're going to be doing things in obscurity for the rest of your life. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of dog sports. We keep everything behind closed doors. I think as well, the way that the FCI insists on pretending that we don't use any tools has backed themselves into a really dangerous position. So people don't want people coming to trials because you'll see that I wear a prong collar in the car park and I have to hide that and take it off before I go into the field. Whereas in PSA, we don't hide that. Like, no, like on the field, there's rules, but on your walk up to the field, if you've got a prong collar on your dog on the walk up to the field, that's fine. Like we're not pretending that. I walk up with my ball in my right hand and my leash in my left with a prong collar attached to the dog. I'm not pretending that I don't use either of those 2 things. And I think that's all part of the importance of the PSA sort of vibe is that we're like, no, this is real. We're creating real dog training. Not like I'm saying, not that I think the scenarios are real, especially that guy just stole my wallet. We're like, yeah, cool, we'll fucking blast him. But the pieces of the training, like I'm putting my dog in a position where he doesn't know this. We haven't rehearsed this picture, and I'm going to test my training. I love that. And I'm going to like get to push the limits of my training and demonstrate how I got here. Like I'm totally fine with people knowing I use tools to achieve this, because I think what we've seen
because
in a
you
lot
did.
of the other sports, exactly. What we see in a lot of the other sports is that people as high as world champion level who are fantastic balance trainers don't get to talk about that, because if they do, they'll be kicked out of their sport. And so they have to pretend that they're force-free trainers. And I've been to seminars of these people who will only show you one side of the coin, because they know, and they acknowledge that. They say to you, like, I can't show you this because if I get seen, if you're all filming, everybody films everything these days. And if I get seen with a prong collar on the end of this leash, then I will be kicked out of the organization that I have been striving to be the world champion at and have been successfully in the past. So that's like, I respect them for having to do that, because that's the game that they're playing. But I would never put myself in that position where I have to lie to people. Like I don't like, and I think that's for us as you know, balance trainers and people who make content and that kind of shit, we can't lie about how we got to where we did, because then the people who will ban the tools will use us as examples. I have, you know, I should be careful saying this, but I did a bunch of private lessons with, it was on Zoom with a police officer in Germany. I've got to be careful how much details I give, but this person never turned on the camera. So I never got to see that person because they were so concerned, and they were doing their dog handlers course, and they got stitched up and got given a very powerful dog, and they're expected to use all force-free techniques the way to get there, right? So special lessons with me, we end up getting, you know, of course we had to use the tools. I talked them through how to do it, which they secretly did. And then they topped their course. This person paid $180 to book a session with me just to cry and tell me that they felt like a fraud because they topped the course. And so now they were being used as an example of what the abilities of force-free training are, but there was no force-free training. It was the real good training that got them there. And I think that that's what we're seeing in a lot of protection sports all around the world, is people pretending because they have to, that they don't train in a particular way, and that gives evidence and credence to the people who will try and ban the tools and say, well, this person doesn't do it and they're the world champion. That look, I've never seen them do it. And you go, yeah, well, I have, but I didn't film it, right? Like I trained with that person and I was on the back line. I was the one helping run the prong collar, you know, like stuff like that. So that's why I'm so pro PSA, for all of those reasons. And more than anything, it's fucking cool. It's fun. Like it's fun to play.
I'm catching the bug, dude. I think I'm catching it. Well, I still have a ways to go, but even with Fred and Chris, Fred Hassan from America here, and Chris, and just watching, I mean, something's happening here, dude, that is like, there's just something going on that is very interesting to me. And I love the fact, the randomness, right? The randomness, the transparency that you're talking about. We live in a world where chaos and order is inevitable, right? And so that aspect of it. What about you, Glenn?
Well, I'm not going to try and compete with anything that Pat said, because I think he said it so eloquently, everything he commented about PSA. But yeah, it's truly a transformative sport. I remember the original conversation that we had probably back in around 2017. We were sitting in the shed, and you know, Pat came to me and said, hey, you know, have you heard about PSA? And I hadn't really at the time. And he said, I'm really thinking about getting this started here. What do you think? You know, like, do you think because we've got the space, we've got this shed, we've got all the property here, we could kick it off, we could really make a good go of it, because there was an attempt to get it going, but it was just not happening. It was, you know, dare I say, it was in the wrong management team at the time. And I had reservations because of a lot of those other elements that Pat raised before. There's so many secrets and lies that you have to tell. There's so many politics involved in being involved in dog sports. It's not the people who want to do it, it's the people who are leading it. An example of that, and again, to add what Pat was saying before, my old dog Harley, he knew a complete Schutzen three routine, back in the 90s when I was heavily involved in Schutzen. But because he was a crossbreed and he wasn't purebred, I wasn't allowed to compete. I was shunned at every opportunity. I was allowed to do a BH. That was it. But this dog, he could track. He could do an FH style track. He could track for kilometers. He could do the entire protection routine. He could do the entire obedience routine, but there was no fucking way they were going to let me compete. They did everything to block me from doing it. And there may be people who are watching this saying, oh, that's bullshit. I don't remember it that way. I'm very clear about it. I'm very clear about the resistance that I was met with, how much of an outlier I was made to be. And, it was an incredible insult to the time and the talent and the training that people put into me, the amount of hours I put into it. And it was always like, no, you can't be involved in this. You're not one of us. You're an outlier. You have an off-breed. You cannot do this. Where PSA embraces that, like the politics are minimal. The amount of fuckery that you have to go through is almost non-existent. And I say that with affection because, I know Jerry well. And I know the team very well. I've been accepted as a deputy judge into the PSA family, and they try and move heaven and earth for you to try and make it accessible and try and bring you in. And sometimes that gets met with some skepticism by some of the other groups. Like they look at it and go, "Oh, PSA is just a bunch of thugs coming in and doing stupid shit with their dogs." Couldn't be further from the truth. Couldn't be further from the truth. Like, as far as a crossover sport, for a dog to be able to do a sport and then move into more real-time scenarios, PSA offers a lot of those jobs, especially for industry professionals, like agencies, where they really could go out and work their dog in a field, because now the dog has a lot more capability with the environmental factors that the surprise scenarios offer. So instead of the dog being locked into a routine, there's a famous cartoon meme where there's a police officer, and it's a cartoon of a dog where he's talking to the dog, and the police officer says, "Go and get that man." And there's a burglar in there, and he says, "Oh, but he's not wearing one of those protective things on his arm." And then he goes, "No, go get him." And then the dog goes, "Oh, but it might hurt him." So I know that's fiction. I know it's a cartoon. And I'm not trying to say that PSA creates aggressive dogs. It creates incredible management of dogs, like incredible management in such
real world scenarios.
Real world scenarios, like some of the scenes that are set up and the complexities that are put into it, and the level of management and control and the relationship that it builds between owner and dog. And, I often play clips of these to people who have aggressive dogs that come to me and have no recall, which funnily enough is literally 99% of the time. They have no recall with their dog. And then they talk to me about the complexity and the impossibility in having a recall with the dog. And I show them, like high level PSA dogs that are doing, like the send to decoy and have to recall like seconds before it. Janet Edwards did it with her dog Gecko at the Nationals in Texas when we were there last year, and the dog got within a foot of the decoy and then came straight back. And there's a myriad of other people who have done that incredible work before, where it's just been absolutely fucking mind-blowing. And I show that to people and I say, it is achievable. The only thing that they've got that you haven't done is they've invested time into this. They've developed the relationship. They've done the mentoring, the coaching that needs to do it. Your dog's just had carte blanche of an easy lifestyle where it hasn't had to do this before. It's achievable, but you've got to want it. You've got to put the time into doing it. And I said, it doesn't have to be at this level, but it can be at a sustainable level. And that's what I love about PSA, because it really highlights the potential of dogs and the hope that you can actually build around the capacity to develop those relationships and those beneficial control mechanisms around dogs. What are we looking at here, Bill?
This is Fred, level 3 with a muzzle on, everybody unsuited.
Yeah.
And so but what gets me is that people are idiots in the world, dude. And people will do weird shit to your dog. Here in America too, we've had instances where people will purposely get bit by a dog so that they can sue you. and especially if you have a powerful dog. They'll look for beware of dog signs, wander onto a property, get sued. And I mean, to me, this is just the like the pinnacle of having control of your dog. And this guy is coming at him trying to, or he's agitating this dog, and the dog stays on him too. I mean, and some people don't know. And then Fred gives him a command.
Well, what
he
you
has to escort him.
Yeah, it's a muzzle fight where it's sent to a passive person. So the dog has been instructed to, as much as you would in law enforcement, where you might have somebody there that's wielding a weapon, and you'll need to send the dog in because this person is a real and viable threat to somebody. So you're saying to the dog, you need to go and disarm this person, or at least hold them for me. So perform an arrest effectively. So there have been times where I've been involved in, real life private security, where I've had to do similar things with people where, people have been violent. They've been going to cause grievous bodily harm to other people. And I've had to send my dog on them before. And they're not directly attacking me, but it's a situation where, it's a life-threatening situation to other people. And I've had to put my dog in those situations where even his well-being is threatened. And if the dog isn't trained for this, if the dog doesn't understand what to do in these situations, your dog may very well A, back out of it, or B, bite the wrong person. So giving the dog clarity and guidance around how to develop these things is essential. And when we get back into the sport side of things, it's developed around the dog understanding that, yes, this is a sport, but for some of the dogs, this is a very real situation as well. But they also know I'm not allowed to do some of these behaviors that I really want. Look at him actively avoiding the decoy there. I'm not allowed to do these behaviors unless I'm specifically cued that it's allowable by you, the handler, and I understand this through my training as well. And for all the dogs that I've done, dangerous dog work or aggression work with, which has been many, many hundreds of dogs, dare I say. But for all the dogs that I've done it with, I've never come across a well-trained sport dog that I've had to consider a council issue with. It's always been pet dogs. It's always been dogs that don't have any of the level of control, any of these mechanisms built into it as well. So, mate, from my point of view, the more people that got involved in dog sports, the more people that understood this level of control and invested, let's take a pet dog population. There are literally billions of dogs out there. Let's go into millions, hundreds of millions of dogs. There's hundreds of millions of dogs out there that literally, and many of these, let me again say, many of these are not a problem, but there is a high percentage of them that are a problem as well. And the reason that they're a problem is because they don't invest in anything like this. They don't understand anything like this. This is, like these control mechanisms and these types of training it's often presented to them in a way where it's an aversive, where the dogs don't like it, where it's causing pain to the dogs, where the dogs are suffering. But if you look at the relationship of the dog here, tail wagging, ears up, the dog's very invested, enthusiastic, loving its life, out every day with its handler. There was a little bit of slippage there.
Yeah.
The dog was tested, but again, his training prevented him from doing anything wrong. So he wants to do it. Of course he wants to do it. He's trained to do this. He's encouraged to do this. This is why the decoys are there trying to bait the dog. They're doing everything that they possibly can to make the dog slip. But the training to the dog is saying, man, you have to understand here that this isn't allowable at this point in time, and you have to listen to me. I wish I could convey this with many of the people who I've met, people that I've helped go and defend as a subject matter expert in court. I wish that people would actually invest in this, even afterwards, even after we've done consulting together. I really wish they would invest in this. And the small amount of people who do bear the fruit of it. They get dogs who understand, I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed to bite people. I'm not allowed to do something which I feel is going to improve my life or prevent a problematic situation from arising, or to deal with my big feelings. PSA is an incredible sport. I can't advocate for it enough.
I love this stuff. Man, this is incredible. Well, and it brought you to Vietnam. That's
Yeah.
why you guys went to Vietnam. Did you go, Pat, to Vietnam?
Nah, I couldn't get there. I was busy.
Oh, damn. Well, and that's another thing that I just wanted to chat with you about is your experience in Vietnam and what other countries, like PSA has brought you to America, both of you.
Mhm.
You guys went to Dallas recently and a couple other places with PSA trials. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so PSA is growing in like outside of America at a pretty rapid rate, mostly because, as I said, it's the less barriers to entry. So it's gotten quite big in India. In fact, the first PSA trial in India was the first ever civilian dog sport trial in India. And so to my understanding, they don't have any of the other sports. You know, what you see mostly around the world is IGP, and mostly because Germans are good exporters, right? So they put a lot of work into exporting IGP. And so that's why it's sort of the most popular game and requires that probably, aside from tracking fields, that's a real issue that they're facing now, but like it's the least amount of infrastructure that you need for IGP. Whereas PSA, you need multiple decoys, you need bite suits instead of just sleeves. It becomes more expensive. But PSA is definitely growing around the world because of those minimal barriers to entry. So we're seeing now that Vietnam's come online, Malaysia, India is quite a big region. I'd say that I think they're like about the same sort of size as us. They got about the same sort of number of people that are competing at the moment. We've seen it hit the UK hard and is growing like crazy in the UK, but they were ready, you know, like the UK were screaming for PSA, like because they have some people who are incredible trainers and wanted to do something with a bit more oomph and a bit more power. And they've got those night trials, which is the bite work component of it. So they had a bunch of, first of all, they've got access to Europe. So they've got like, very really unprecedented access to powerful dogs that are capable of doing this kind of stuff. But they also had a culture of incredible decoys who were ready to start working in a PSA capacity. So it's growing all around the world, some places more than others. And the beauty of PSA in that regard is that your titles are internationally recognized. So it's especially difficult for us here in Australia with quarantine laws and stuff like that, but there's no difference between my level 2 title and somebody in India's level 2 title. It's the same thing. And so if I were so inclined, I can travel the world and I can do these things in other places, and there's only the one organization. What we find with some of the other sports is because, like, for example, here, page 1, paragraph 1 of the Mondio rulebook says that the host nation's kennel club has to invite the judge. Well, I can tell you, no judge has ever been invited to Australia by the ANKC, right, to judge a Mondio trial, because they don't recognise it. They don't want it as a sport. They don't want those things. So that's the beauty of PSA, is that it's one overarching headquarters that governs the way that the game is played around the world, and titles are titles no matter what. And this is the first year that the PSA Nationals is now being called the PSA World. So I think they called it that last year, but this time it's being really advertised. This is a world championship. People will travel from all around the world, and we've been seeing that trickling in over the years. I wanted to, in 2019, I really wanted to take my dog to what was Nationals at the time and show them. I'm very lucky I didn't, because he would have been stuck in the US during COVID. It would have been a disaster. But that one was the first that there was people outside of North America. People came from Africa to do it, or from South Africa to do it. So it's really growing. It's a community of people who are working towards the same kind of thing. And it to me, I think that it's really cool that it strengthens bonds across nations. It's really cool that there's, India is a great example of this, right? Like there's dog training as a profession is really fairly new there, right? And it's created like a pool of dog trainers who are now, tangibly recognizable as high quality dog trainers, because we can see, like, we get to live stream and see what they're doing on the PSA field. I've watched plenty of Indian trial footage, and it's to the point, like, it's this globalization of this high skill set. And when we have people, there's all these online courses, mine and others, and then there's online coaches. There's people who have all this really cool information in their Patreons. Like, you look at Sean Edwards' Jerry himself has a Patreon, Ben Lipensky and Quigley. These like really, you know, the key people, high level competitors in the game. You can learn from these people, but then also because of the nature of the way that trials are run, you've got to bring in decoys, you've got to bring in judges, and what helps pay for those things is the seminars. So we just had Sean and Janet here, and you know, they come all the way to Australia. They give up 2 weeks of their real life. They got real businesses, real family, real things going on. And in order for them to come out and judge a trial, we can then assist in the paying for that by having a seminar. And so that gives us opportunities to train with those people. So I think that's one of the cool things about Bite Sports and the way that works, or sports in general, is that by having to bring in officials initially to help run the trial, you then get access to those people before and after the trial for training wise. And that's what we've seen quite a lot of in PSA is, you know, and other sports as well. It's not specific to PSA, but we do a really good job of it, is that people have to travel around in order to spread that knowledge and that information. And for the most part, people aren't really charging to do that, right? Because like it's the community feel of like, we're doing this together. So I'm a professional. This is like, you know, like you get people like Josh Kirby, for example, like incredible decoy, professional decoy who really should be charging people a ton of money. But if I get on the phone to Josh and say, hey, Josh, can you come out and decoy a trial for us in Australia? I'm paying for his flights to come out, but really, and his accommodation, but that's it, because he's coming to decoy a trial. And while he's here, the nature of a person like Josh is that he's not going to be like, well, I'm just going to sit in my hotel room until you have me at this trial. He's going to be training with us, you know? And so that's what we see around the world is these guys travel, they go these places. It's one of the things like, you know, we went to nationals last year. I did a seminar the week before, but then in the build up, I just put it out there, just put it into a bunch of the like PSA people groups and stuff like that. I was like, hey, I'm in town for a week. Like, who wants help? And, you know, got taken up by plenty of people. Like, and there's no money changing hands there. These are people who are all like, you know, because the people I'm helping are as good and better dog trainers than me. They just need that extra person, that extra set of hands on a line, or they need an extra decoy, or, you know, whatever it is. That's the community feel of all of us working towards a common goal together. And that's what I think is so important. It creates cohesion, it's unity, it's working together. And I think that's one of the really important things. Like, it's easy to sort of not like people and like become very insular in some aspects of the dog world. But if you do that in PSA, you can't survive. You can't pass because you need people, right? Like, you see those videos you're just showing of Fred there, like he's prepping for a, you know, level 3 type stuff. Well, that means he needs at least 4 people who are willing to be decoys for him, right? Like, you have to have at least 4 friends in the dog space if you want to be able to train to that level. And so it forces people to then work together and be cohesive and not be assholes that get themselves in a position where no one wants to work with them, because you can't survive in these games doing that. So for these reasons and many more, I love it. And I think that it's for Glenn's put in a ton of work to it, and many others in Australia have done the same. If we've committed a lot of our time, energy, effort, and money to getting these things going, and the return that we'll get is a community. It's not a return of like money. We're all losing money doing PSA, right? Like, we're not making money doing this stuff. But it's the cohesive community. And where we do recover that money is, you know, through the PSA network that I've built for myself. I have this Rolodex of people that when I need help with something that is work related, I've seen their skill set, right? Like, I've seen them measured. I've watched them compete. And so I know how they train. I know how they go. I know whether they're worth their salt. I know what their dogs are like. I've got to see them perform. And so if I need to buy a dog to get to someone or whatever, like, I can very easily, through just my PSA network of people, I can buy a dog. I can have that dog shipped. I can get the dog transported to somebody who will raise that for me and then ship it to Australia, all within the PSA network. And so all those businesses that I'm now employing within the dog space are people who I have gotten to see how, like, I know they're good because I've watched them do those things. And so I'm in the space with them.
I just need to add a point there to what you just said, Pat, because I feel that this is a vital part of this conversation. This is why every law enforcement agency and every military group who is utilizing dogs for work should defend all of these dog sports, especially PSA, because if we just allow this world narrative to just close them down and shut them down in various different countries, it's going to affect our law enforcement groups as well. You know, and they recognize this as well. Like Pat's talking to law enforcement groups and army groups. I'm talking to, you know, many of the same people in those circles as well. They identify and acknowledge that once these things are under attack and once the limitations are in place, it's going to significantly affect the outcomes and the availability of their dogs. And even understanding that point that Pat made before, these sports signify what these dogs can do. They show us the capability of the dogs. They demonstrate to us the worthiness of breeding these dogs because they have got clear heads and can be trained and can be utilized into workability, like that crossover from sport to you know, real life applications. This is all signified through PSA, Mondio, you know, all of the ring sports, even IGP. You know, it does have a correlating effect on what we can use out there on the fields.
Well, I think that PSA would be the most important sport to law enforcement based on the real world scenarios, but also how many PSA 3 dogs are there in the world?
It's high 20s, might be low 30s now. I can't remember the exact number, but there's not many.
And that just speaks to the exclusivity of reaching that level into the complexity that is required of the knowledge base for that training. And how many IGP3 dogs are there in the world?
Tens of thousands.
Okay. And to me, that speaks just the sheer numbers, the scarcity of those dogs. It's not because we don't have a ton of dogs in PSA and that it's, you know, that's just not a numbers thing. It is a requirements thing that training.
Generalization. That's the big thing. It's the generalization. You know, it's being able to do the behavior you're asking for the dog in a context the dog doesn't recognize as familiar, right? Like where the dog's like, hey, there's this picture tells me that many things could happen, but you tell me which one of those many things will happen. Whereas, you know, sometimes in other sports, the dog doesn't have any cause to generalize. And they're like, okay, at this point in the routine, we do this, and this always predicts this. And there's challenges in that too. That doesn't necessarily make it easier. It just makes it more predictable. And it's a different style of training, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I guess something that needs to be added here too is IGP, which was originally derived from Schutzen, has been around since, you know, the turn of 1900s, and it's a very popularized and widespread sport as well, where PSA is just starting to gain momentum now. So, you know, look, the PSA 3 routines is significantly more difficult. It's something, the surprise scenarios really throw people off, and the reality of what the dog needs to face presents it with a high level degree of difficulties, whereas IGP still is a difficult sport. And respect to all the people, I'm not saying this with any disdain or disrespect whatsoever. It still offers you know, its own complexities, but it's still a routine that's known very well to the dog. Like it's something that every time you go out in the field, you can practice that. With the surprise scenarios, you just have to hope for the best that your dog's going to listen to you on the day and succumb to, you know, that practical advice and the mentorism that you've been working with your training directors and your decoys, because the judge can throw curveballs at you and say, everything that you thought was going to happen on the field today ain't going to happen that way. I'm throwing a different routine in. And, you know, like there's a lot of different stimuli that's going to be present on this field. The only time you're going to know what that looks like is today. But you have to prepare all of that in advance.
Yeah. Never mind. I just dropped out of my brain what I was going to say. I was looking at the comment you deleted there, Bill, of the lady that's called it, said you are a disgusting human. And I was like, well, which one of us? Be more specific.
Yeah, I get that every once in a while. I get people that will come in and troll, but I just block and delete right away. But yeah, I don't know. Be more specific, lady.
I want to know who was the disgusting human.
I think it was Fred, probably, because that's the video we were watching. Yeah, but
I'm fine then.
Well, and fail harder. That's one of the things.
Draw from that, like it's amazing what people draw from that, like
and how salacious they get too. You know?
Yeah. Just quickly, if you wanted to speak about the guys from Vietnam, I want to say that what an incredible effort that the people in Vietnam put together. It was absolutely amazing what they did with the limited amount of knowledge that they had at the time. There's the there's the trial video there. Incredible effort that they put together. I know this lady. There's me in my hat that Jason Furman hates. There's a lady in Australia who's also international as well. She doesn't like being recognised, but her name is Tanawa, and she put an incredible amount of effort into helping assist PSA headquarters and also the Vietnamese team in getting this orchestrated, in organising me and organising the decoys. I can't thank her enough for the incredible amount of administrational work that she did behind the scenes to get it together. A large part of the success of this coming together was Tanawa working with all of the team, the Vietnamese PSA group. The guys over there did a lot of their work and understanding of PSA through correspondence. They were corresponding with Koi Fam in the United States. They really didn't have a lot of prep time and understanding of how a trial. This is their first ever trial, the first ever trial that they put together. So what they did on their first attempt was absolutely fantastic. It was almost a mirror image of what we found in Australia as well. We were doing a lot of the things that we understood about PSA. The only difference was that Pat had traveled to the United States and invested a lot of his own personal time in getting to understand how the sport works, the rules, how it all comes together. So he was able to bring that knowledge back and present it to us in a very palatable format that we understood. Okay, this is what it is and how it works. So yes, they did have some of this information, probably not as on hand as what we had. Nonetheless, they did a tremendous effort. The decoys that you're seeing there are two Indian boys that came over, Dev and Nick Hill. Fantastic effort from those guys. Great decoys, fantastic human beings as well. Really enjoyed my time with them. Had great conversations, great laughs. Love watching their skill set. Love watching what they brought to the table, along with Adrian Ray, who was the what's Adrian's last name? Pat, do you know? We'll find out in a minute. We all call her Adrian Ray. That's what she's got on her account. Adrian was the senior decoy on the day. Fantastic decoy, an incredible depth of knowledge, great dog trainer. All up, it was an incredible experience with them. We managed to get some PDCs on the dogs. We had one of the dogs over there who does have an IGP3. Wow. Lovely dog. Really, really incredible skill set. Quack is the name of the guy who owns it, and the dog's name is Cody. He did an incredible job. He almost got a PSA 1 first leg. The only problem is the dog just didn't have enough experience with seeing a field with so much distraction on it. It was like putting a kid into a candy shop and letting them run around in there and dip their hands in the containers. And this is the problem the dog had. It just didn't have enough, what do we call it, stimulus control in that environment. So once he overcomes that, there's no doubt in my mind that they will have their first PSA 1 leg or even a title over there. He was very close. The bite work from the dog we didn't actually get to that because he didn't pass his obedience, but nonetheless, an incredible show that they put on, incredible courage from them all. They very passionate people, very lovely, kind people as well. They made us all feel so welcome. They really went out of their way to put dinners on, to host us, to manage us, to look after everything. I felt really appreciated and loved from the minute I arrived in the country to the minute I left. I miss them. I think of them often, and they, regularly post things to me. I was reading happy birthday messages from most of the team over there. So I've made more friends and developed more family with these people.
Excellent. I someday want to go to Vietnam. That's why I was asking you. Yeah.
It's a trip, man. It's an experience.
Yeah, I got to come down and see you guys one day too, down in Australia. I've never been down there.
Definitely do that.
Well, you guys were talking also about Patreon. I wanted to plug your Patreon as well as I have a Patreon that I started. I was inspired by you guys. So here's my patreon.com/bowwowbills. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll be adding more content there, and I have some exclusive interviews. And then we also have the Canine Paradigm / the Canine Paradigm on Patreon. also, and someday I might tap you guys to do some exclusive content on my Patreon as well. And you guys, 3 hours, you're awesome. I appreciate you so much. I love you both. I'm so happy to call you my friend, and thank you for your time today, you guys.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Bill, for everything that you do in the community too. And your Patreon as well as ours, if I can express to people the amount of hours that we all put in is, like I know, let me talk selfishly about my own side for a minute, the amount of time that I have to put in to edit each podcast. So it sounds nice when you guys are listening to it. If it takes us an hour to record that podcast, it's 3 to 4 times the time to edit it and put it out there for all the content that we need to write. Then Pat does an enormous amount of work in Patreon. He really has shouldered and the incredible laborious amount of time that he's put into that unselfishly to put that together has been just immense. And the people who do support us on Patreon, for you, Bill, and for us, I can't express enough gratitude for you.
Thank you. Yes,
it's paid for, like the laptop that that we're doing this on, because we do all our recording, all the studio, our microphones, everything, all of the people who have done that. Unfortunately, we had to be on Patreon. We had to sign up, as a company for the Canine Paradigm. Not that it generates big dollars, but it's always fantastic if we've got money in the coffers to pay the bills, to pay for our tax now, because we get hit with a tax bill as well. The government is relentless on making sure that you pay your blood in anything that they're doing. So we have, $1 tiers that is basically just buying us a coffee. So if life's hard and it's too expensive, but if you can chip that $1 in, it all counts. It all helps. It all helps us as creators to put out as much free information to interview people, to make it all work, to make it all to come together. It doesn't pay us for our times. It just gives us the toys that we need to get these episodes out to you. So, Bill, I appreciate you, and I thank you for all the free content that you've put out there for people as well, and the reach you've given and the voices that you've presented with, a lot of the dog trainers who may have not had a pedestal to talk about their offerings and what they're doing in the world. So thanks, mate.
It's my pleasure. And I do this till I learn as well. I'm passionate about what I do. Great. and appreciate you guys. And thank you very much for your time. I'm good. And happy birthday, Glenn.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, thanks for spending time with me on your birthday, dude. All right, let's say goodbye to everybody, and then I'll say goodbye to you guys in the studio. So bye, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Ciao. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for spending 3 hours with us.